mile-long tank convoy heading to Kyiv on day 6 of the Russian invasion.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 1st of March. If you're watching in Wales, happy St David's Day. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn and Isabel.
Live on radio and television and online. Coming up this morning, this is what we've got.
Russian forces have launched renewed attacks on the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv and Kharkiv.
Boris Johnson has said the UK will continue to bring maximum pressure to bear on Russia ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today.
It comes as the International Criminal Court prosecutor announces he will open an investigation into potential war crimes in Ukraine. In an address late last night, President Zelenskyy accused Russia of war crimes.
You can have your say. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. Good to hear from you.
OK, let's first go to our security editor, Mark White, who has an update on the very latest. Mark, bring us up to date on that convoy of Russian armour, about 40 miles advancing on Ukraine, on Kyiv.
Yeah, very sobering images that are coming out this morning, giving an indication of the might of the Russian forces that are amassed just north of the capital, Kyiv, and still heading down there. Those images show what we believe was a main armoured division yesterday that was certainly a few miles long. It's now put at more than 40 miles long. I think the reason for this is that the vehicles on the images that were released yesterday were showing them about 3 abreast or so, and I think now the convoy has snaked out. So still the same massive convoy in terms of there being hundreds of armoured vehicles, tanks, armoured personnel carriers, troop transport vehicles, fuel supply vehicles, other logistics, ammunition and food supply trucks. So all they need really to encircle Kyiv, if that's what they want to do, and all intelligence sources suggest that may well be the aim. Now, we've been getting some intelligence information out, obviously from Western allies, always important if the UK and the US can do their own intelligence and analysis on the ground. And we've been hearing from a US senator, that Senator Chris Murphy has been tweeting after a briefing. He said, just leaving a classified briefing on the Ukraine crisis, he said confirmation that the Russians have fallen behind their timeline. The Ukrainian resistance has been fierce and there have been multiple Russian losses, he said. He's also calling for the budget to be sorted out, perhaps understandably more domestically orientated about their ability really to counter the Russian threat. They say that the Russians' ability to keep their supply lines running to Ukraine remains alive, but Russia, as I said at the top there, will encircle Kyiv. They also say that US and allies are coordinating to not only freeze the assets of Putin and his oligarch allies, but also seize those assets as well. This is likely a further step that Putin's inner circle hadn't anticipated, and so he believes that that is further pressure, the united front that the US, the UK, many other allies in the West are putting together. In terms of the fighting overnight, it has again been relatively quiet in the capital, Kyiv, but there had yesterday been fierce fighting in Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, in the northeast. There were images that were released of that fighting that had showed what appeared to be cluster munitions being dropped in a residential area of Kharkiv. The Ukrainian military say that Russian-grad rockets had also been used. They're putting the death toll at dozens of people. The United Nations Aid Agency chief has been speaking about this. He said, Martin Griffith, that he is very concerned at the mounting death toll. Let's have a listen.
The scale of civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure, even in these very early days, is alarming. Humanitarian needs are growing at an alarming pace. in the hardest hit areas. Civilian children, women and men have been injured and killed. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights reported at least 406 civilian casualties, including at least 102 dead in these few days.
And as I say, they believe that the death toll is likely much, much higher than the official estimates that they've got at the moment. We've seen pictures that are coming out regularly from Ukraine that show residential areas that have been targeted, that have been struck, either deliberately targeted or accidentally struck. Regardless, when you are mounting an invasion of a country and fighting takes place in cities, then you're going to have civilian casualties. And that, in turn, has led to a significant influx of the refugees to neighbouring countries have spilled across the border. 500,000, the UN High Commission for Refugees was putting that at yesterday. It is likely to be higher than that again today, and there's something like 7 million people internally displaced in Ukraine as they're fleeing areas where the worst fighting is taking place.
And also, Mark, Russia facing a war crimes investigation, we hear, not only over the deaths of 16 children now, but also claims that it's using cluster bombs against civilians in Kharkiv yesterday.
Yes, I mean, what the UN Criminal Court is going to do is certainly look at those incidents to see whether it warrants a prosecution. There are multiple reports coming out from the Ukrainians about what they claim are war atrocities, but that will have to be investigated. It's something that's likely to be very protracted because clearly there is fighting on the ground. You can't mount a proper investigation while that is underway, and it's likely to be later when that country is hopefully stabilised at some point that these proper investigations can begin with a view, if they decide that, to mount a prosecution in The Hague. But at very early stages at that, they just say they're looking into the potential for war crimes. In the meantime, of course, you have got the talks which took place yesterday between the Ukrainians and the Russians. Now, it concluded without agreement, but on the positive side, at least they're still talking and have agreed, we understand, to come back to the negotiating table tomorrow, not tomorrow, but in the next 2 or 3 days. They say that they're going back to their respective countries to speak to the leaders in those countries to talk about areas where they feel that there might be a chance of reaching some agreement, but only time will tell as to whether they can have a proper ceasefire.
Agreement over what? What are they negotiating? Surrender?
Well, the Ukrainians want an immediate ceasefire and the Russians to withdraw. Well, they might get a ceasefire. They're not going to get anytime soon, I don't think, the Russians agreeing to withdraw. As far as the Russians, well, nobody really knows. I mean, they had said before that they went into Ukraine, that they wanted to stabilize that region, demilitarize the region and denazify it as well, whatever that means. So, you know, the Russians, the Ukrainians, they say, some issues of potential for agreement, but we'll only, again, know in the fullness of time. There's still talking to take place, clearly. I think the immediate goal has to be a ceasefire, even if it's just a cessation of violence, to allow those refugees, people in the worst affected areas, to get out of there and get to safer areas in Ukraine or indeed across the border into friendlier countries.
It suits the Russians, does it not? I mean, we're talking about these convoys, and one of the reasons that they are behind in their timeline is basically, to put it crudely, they've run out of petrol.
Well, I think there's certainly something to be said for that. I think there is logistical problems. We are hearing that from both US intelligence agencies and defense intelligence here in the UK who've been carrying out analysis of what's been going on the ground. It is a massive logistical operation. Ukraine is a huge country next to Russia. It's the largest country in Europe. So it takes hundreds of miles to get even from the north in Belarus down to the capital, Kyiv. And when they're coming under attack, those supply trucks, those fuel tankers being targeted by these anti-tank, anti-armored vehicle missiles supplied by Britain and the US, it is taking a toll, there's no doubt. But let's not underestimate the power that Vladimir Putin has at his disposal, and he hasn't used that full power. But the real concern is the more setbacks he suffers on the ground, the more of his troops that he loses and armoured vehicles and tanks that he loses, the more violent he may turn in terms of the weapons and the ferocity with which he may decide to bomb some of Ukraine's cities. We know that, as I say, from Kharkiv yesterday, there was significant bombing there. We may be seeing a ratcheting up of the efforts by the Russian military in some of these key locations. As I say, the more losses he suffers, there is a real fear that he becomes increasingly desperate in the measures he uses to gain control of Ukraine.
OK, Mark White, thank you very much. We can speak now to an expert on Ukraine, the author of Putin's War Against Ukraine, Revolution, Nationalism and the Russian-Ukraine War. Very warm welcome to the programme, Taras Kuzio. Look, we were just hearing from Mark White there talking about the increasing desperation of President Putin as things seem to be more difficult in this Ukraine invasion than perhaps he might have anticipated. Is that how you would read it? And do you think that makes the situation even more dangerous, given, as so many people are saying, he is an irrational person? You can't really predict what his next move will be.
Well, I've just written an op-ed called "Is Putin a Madman?" So I think it's a bit more than irrational, shall we say. I think we've all done in life some irrational acts, but this is beyond irrational. He's an angry man. He's narcissistic. He believes that he's right. He believes that Ukraine is a Russian land, that these are Russians, that he's liberating from a U.S. puppet state. I mean,
those are serious words, madman. Do you really, really believe he is a madman?
I think that he has traits, what a psychologist wrote a couple of days ago, called hubris syndrome, which includes many different traits which we would call far more than irrational, such as he's a megalomaniac. He believes that he is Russia's destiny. He believes these mythologies and stereotypes about Ukraine, that this is a US puppet state that he's liberating. He's very narcissistic. He is convinced that history is on his side, shall we say. I mean, these are traits which we have seen in other leaders which are extremely dangerous. He's out of touch with reality. He's isolated because of the COVID pandemic. He doesn't take advice because he's surrounded by sycophants. He thinks he knows everything. So all of these traits have led to this bumbling war, not very well planned, hasn't shown the Russian army to be actually very good. And one of the reasons is that he really did believe Ukrainians will be greeting him with flowers, with bread and salt. Instead, they're greeting him with stingers, Turkish drones, and British missiles. So he's angry that this isn't quite happening like he believed it would do. He blames that on Americans on the ground. He thinks Americans are helping Ukrainians, and hence why he threatened nuclear to go sort of nuclear the other day, or threatened to sort of go to a higher nuclear alert. So he is unstable. I think more and more people are saying that. Madman, of course, is a different thing. I mean, I haven't seen him stroking a white cat yet. With in a kind of a James Bond style
how
movie.
does he rule? How does he rule? How does he stay in power? How much would he be looking over his shoulder? Would he be paranoid?
Yes, of course, because there's no honor amongst thieves. He's a combination of three personalities. His former Soviet KGB, which makes him very much into conspiracy theories everywhere, very much into that sort of, anti-American xenophobia. Secondly, he's a mafioso. I mean, he has to be the person who's stolen the most out of everybody in Russia, because otherwise, the others below him wouldn't respect him. So if he leaves office, he can't leave office, because if he did, he'd be put in jail, killed, or at the very least, everything he's stolen will be taken back. And thirdly, he's a Russian nationalist. He of the old style, so he denies the existence of Ukrainians, and that combination of those three personalities is not good.
But Taras, during his decades in power, as a dictator, under the attempt to convince us it's democratically he's in power, he's been adored, hasn't he, by Russians? I mean, people have idolised him. The pictures of him abreast a horse, or shirt off, or rolling with his oversized dogs. I mean, ordinary Russians have adored him. Is that changing, do you think? And could that be his undoing? I mean, in the last few days, we've seen these unprecedented protests. We've seen people queuing at ATMs, unable to get rubles because of the state of the economy after the sanctions. We've seen people being unable to get on the subway because Google and Apple Pay no longer works because of Western sanctions. And will they now finally be questioning exactly what Putin's up to?
Yes, I think that's already been his popularity is already declining in that sense, and this will speed that up. This invasion of Ukraine will not give him the popularity bounce that he had in 2014 when he annexed Crimea from Ukraine, because Crimea has sort of more of a deep mythological connection to Russian nationalism. This invasion will not be popular in Russia. What can we say? Nationalism does sometimes lead to boosts in popularity of leaders, and that was particularly the case when oil and gas prices were high during the sort of first 8 to 10 years of his rule. In the last 3 years, in particular, after he changed the constitution to allow him to stay in power de facto for life, he's become more dictatorial. He's become more politically repressive. He's put more people in jail. So the popularity of him, of his rule, as it were, has already been declined, and I suspect this will increase that. Because I don't think this is a popular war. The sanctions will also lead to a speeding up of the decline of Russia as a great power. Russia was already different to China, rising power, Russia declining power. This will speed up Russia's decline as a great power. And I think a combination of all those, we could see potentially some kind of palace coup, certainly. It's lots of things are on the cards, I think, now. This is not... Putin, I think, has gone too far here. And it's not sure...
Where does it go, Darius? Where are we heading? Where is this going to end? How is this going to end? How's it going to end for him?
Well, for him, it will end badly, as it always does for dictators. I mean, dictators don't go to their allotments and start to grow vegetables in their pension era. That never happens. The question is whether
he takes us all with us. Lots of people suggesting if he's backed into a corner, that's when the nuclear deterrent comes out.
No, I don't think so. That's exactly when a palace coup would happen. It happened in the early 60s with Nikita Khrushchev, who also was erratic, irrational. People thought he was a madman. And it led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he was taken out in the palace coup, replaced by Leonid Brezhnev. So, I mean, there are saying nobody wants to go to a nuclear war. I mean, there are people in Russia who don't support that as well. But certainly he is somebody who is very difficult. I mean, the psychologist who called this a hubris syndrome said it's practically impossible to negotiate with somebody like that because he thinks he's right. There is no kind of compromise central ground. And that will make it very difficult for both the West and for Ukrainians to deal with him. And he's a sociopath. He has he doesn't care about human life, including his own people. So the fact that already 4,500 Russian soldiers have died in only 4 or 5 days of fighting, that's more than America lost in 8 years in Iraq, just to put it into context. And he doesn't give a damn. These just cannon fodder. 18, 20-year-old lads dying for his imperial dream.
Do you think he's a well man from what you know about him? I mean, you're saying he's a madman. Do you think he's a well man? There's a lot of rumours going about with his puffed looks and things that he may be on medication.
Well, he certainly had a few too many Botoxes, and he's paranoid. You see the table. I mean, I've never seen such a long table in my life. The sitting at one end and his security staff or foreign dignitaries sitting at the other. So he is paranoid about the COVID. He's botched that whole dealing with the COVID pandemic in Russia. So he's paranoid there. Yes, I think that he's not the healthy Russian leader as in the same way as he tried to be this macho leader in the first decade of his power. I haven't seen him take his shirt off for quite a while, thank God.
Yeah, thank God. The small mercies. Taras Kuzio, author of Putin's War Against Ukraine, Revolution, Nationalism and Crime. Really good to talk to you this morning. I hope you'll come back on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The time, 21 minutes past 6 on this Tuesday morning. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories in the news today.
Well, the Prime Minister says the UK will put maximum pressure on President Putin ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today. Boris Johnson says Vladimir Putin must fail and will feel the consequences after attacking Ukraine.
Russia has been suspended from all FIFA and UEFA competitions following the invasion of Ukraine. These are football regulatory bodies, and the men's national team from Russia was due to take part in this month's playoffs for place at the World Cup. The European Football Union, UEFA, has also ended its sponsorship deal with Gazprom, the Russian energy company who sponsor the Champions League.
In other news this morning, the social care sector could face extra pressure from the unmet need of people who avoided these services during the first and second wave of the pandemic. That's according to a report by the King's Fund. The report found requests for support from older people to local authorities in England went down from 1.37 million in 2019 to 1.34 million the following year.
NHS leaders and cancer charities are urging people not to delay vital symptom checks rather than letting the fear of cancer diagnosis stop them getting help. It's a new campaign, and the NHS says the disease is much more treatable in the early stages.
The number of people contacting a helpline to stop them or another person viewing child abuse images online more than doubled last year. Over 165,000 people called Stop It Now with worries about their own behaviour or that of someone close to them in 2021. That's up from nearly 80,000 the previous year.
10 special edition stamps are being issued to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the FA Cup.
They feature famous moments from the competition's history, including the first time the final was played at Wembley almost 100 years ago.
The magic of the cup. I mean, I do think, did it ever hold any magic to you? It doesn't matter if it didn't, but did it ever? No. That Saturday wasn't a special day.
No, rugby was the sport in our house, but I can see how much people love it.
Gosh,
like a
I
religion.
love it. I hate when people run down the FA Cup.
No, I can see the magic of it from the sort of clubs that are way down in the league.
Killers.
Yeah, I love that. I do like an underdog.
An underdog.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, look, with that, the time is 23 minutes past 6. We're going to take a break there, and then after that, we're going to be speaking to a Ukrainian woman about the current situation there, because it is important, is it not, just to hear people on the ground. We can have commentators, we can all have our opinions on this, but people who are living it.
Yeah, real people like you and me. Could have been us there, but for the grace of God, we'll be speaking to one of those.
When you do say that, and 2 years ago I was in Kyiv, and listen, it could be Manchester, it could be Birmingham, and it is incredibly ordinary, and even now we're talking about while these missile strikes and things happen, people still go on about their ordinary lives. Life has to go on, and so as Isabel was saying, just imagine if it happened where you live. Okay, we're going to do all that, but first here's the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon and welcome to a new month. A chilly start out there, but plenty of sunshine as March begins. However, it is damp still in the southeast, having seen a weather front stall through the night and really slow down. And in fact, this weather front links back to a warm front, which is going to push north once again later in the day and through much of Wednesday. So make the most of the sunny start, because the sunshine isn't going to last much longer than the next 24 hours. In fact, for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, a chilly start with those blue skies. However, apart from a few showers in the far north and west of Scotland, it's a fine day in these areas. And with light winds, it's going to feel pleasant enough, 8 or 9 Celsius. In the south, though, increasingly cloudy and damp. Light outbreaks of rain mostly, but turning more persistent for parts of Cornwall later on, and not feeling so pleasant under that persistent drizzle. Now, the cloud and the rain in the south makes some progress further north this evening and overnight, reaching Northern Ireland, reaching Northern England by the early hours of Wednesday. Always the steadiest and most persistent rain there across Wales and the southwest. Scotland, meanwhile, keeps the clear skies and the light winds, and so temperatures dipping. Another frosty start to the day on Wednesday. But the blue skies this time don't last. That is, a lot of cloud in the south pushes into central and southern Scotland by the afternoon. Increasingly damp for the central belt, for much of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland as well. Some drier interludes in the south and the east, but for most it's increasingly breezy, cloudy, and would just keep the sunshine there in the far north of Scotland. Otherwise, it is going to turn into a dull and damp day for many. Another dull and damp day to come on Thursday, and that only slowly clearing eastwards during Friday, but it will clear in time for the weekend with more sunshine to come then.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Fast approaching 6:30. Good morning to you. This is Eamonn and Isabel. Breakfast on GB News. And Britain's United Nations Ambassador, Dame Barbara Woodward, warns that Ukraine is on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe.
Yes, many Ukrainians have been forced to flee their homes. One of those fleeing was 11-year-old Polina. She's one of the 16 children killed so far in the Ukraine invasion. Her picture on the front of many of the newspapers, including The Sun this morning. Beautiful little girl, little pink stripe in her hair, like so many girls of her age, smiling out from the paper there.
Shot in a car with her parents by a Russian foot patrol. In Oksana, joining us, a woman who escaped Kyiv on day one of the invasion. So she is now in the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil. Sorry, I've just missed
Oksana,
the name there.
Oksana, yeah.
Right.
So, Oksana, just bring us up to date on your own personal story, where you've fled from, where you are, and how you're feeling.
Hi, morning. Usually you would say, I'm great, I'm okay, or something like that, but it's not the right moment to say that because on last Thursday, I woke up at 5:36 a.m. in the morning, and I do remember the time exactly because this is when my sister called me saying that she just heard explosions in one of the districts in Kyiv, and she said we have to run. So I think I had very few minutes just to pack my things and try and leave immediately because never ever in my life have I imagined that anything like that would happen in Kyiv. And we knew that the Russian troops have gathered around Ukraine for more than 2 months now, but I still decided to stay in Kyiv until there's going to be a real threat to my life, or I won't be feeling safe anymore. So
yeah, and
this was Thursday.
Just to interrupt, I just want to get all of the details from you as you tell us this story, Oksana. So you knew there was this threat. You thought it might happen. I mean, had you even packed a bag in the eventuality that might happen? And if not, how on earth do you decide what to take? What sort of decisions are running through your head at that point?
The decision making at that point is not something you can rationally think about. I already had my documents and the most important things back, and I just took basically a pair of jeans, a hoodie, and one more sweater, and that's it. All of my belongings are left in Kyiv because at that moment I still had hope in my heart, like somewhere inside, that I'm going to be able to go back and the things would be normal, but then everything started, and this is just horrible. I can't find any words to describe what I'm feeling right now.
But still life has to go on in some sort of warped way, Oksana, but you're talking about the abnormality of all of this. Is there any normality perversely between the huge disruption that's going on? Are you witnessing any normality?
Well, any normality. I mean, I was able to leave Kyiv on the very first day when the city was already full and packed with traffic, and I've never seen Kyiv like that. Everyone was trying to leave and escape, and it took me 15 hours to get to my parents' house where I was going. Normally it would take me just 5. And the normality is that I don't see any normality right now. The normality is that I can eat food and I can have some breakfast or lunch whenever, but not even in a lunchtime or breakfast time, because of the sirens that are constantly on. You have to hide, and everything is disrupted right now. You don't know if you're going to be able to sleep. You don't know if you're going to be able to eat because you need to constantly hide in the shelter, and that's the reality right now.
So, Oksana, you say you travelled what would normally be a 5-hour journey to your parents. I presume that is Ternopil, where you are. Are you feeling safe there? I mean, you say there are air raid sirens, and you have some sort of shelter. I mean, was that made in the last few days, or has that been a long-standing shelter?
Well, I'm not. I have moved again, but I'm still in the Western Ukraine. Shelter, the bomb shelter, when we say bomb shelter, usually it's the basement, so it's not even like a bomb shelter because, well, the bomb shelter is a specially equipped place, but in most of the houses, right, you have only like a very basic basement, so to say. So you have to bring there everything yourself, the blanket or water. Every time we go there, we take a backpack with us, full with the food or some warm clothes and water. And every time you have to run forth and back. And this is very, distressing. I feel like a lot of people now in such a distress that we can't normally, just process things. We're constantly on alert. And we're constantly checking the news because it's getting worse and worse every day.
And how do you feel about the news this morning of this 40-mile convoy of Russian military tanks and the like, heading towards Kyiv? And how do you feel about Zelenskyy, who's adamant that he will stay there?
Well, one thing that I know for sure is that I'm so proud of my country and my people and the leadership of Ukraine right now. Our armed forces, I think the world hasn't expected this from us, maybe, you know, or I don't know, just opening eyes on who Ukrainian people really are. I now consider us to be the bravest nation in the world who are standing up to an aggressor with one of the, you know, most powerful armies in the world. But we are fighting for our freedom, and I'm proud of our president, who is refusing to, you know, to go to any, I don't know, like to give away even a centimeter of our land. And I have trust and confidence in who's leading Ukraine right now. Couldn't be prouder.
Oh.
Well, sorry to interrupt you there. Just thank you very much for talking to us. Oksana, we hope you stay safe and appreciate you making the effort. Thank you for telling us your story. Look, with that, we're going to go to the break, and then we're going to discuss what's in the newspapers, what's on the front of the newspapers, and the death of so many children from what has happened so far. Robert Fox and Petri Hoskin with that after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Look, these are the front pages that you're waking up to this morning, and we begin with the Sun and a young girl. We're just so sad. Her name was Polina. That says it all, really. Shot dead in a car with her parents by a Russian foot patrol. Just one of 16 child victims of Putin's war in Ukraine.
Here's the Telegraph. It reports that the Russian President Vladimir Putin's been accused of war crimes amid the invasion of Ukraine.
Times, Russian forces have escalated their efforts to capture Ukraine's two largest cities, Kyiv and Kharkiv.
The Guardian, Russia's deadly raids defy sanctions and peace talks. That's the front for them.
The Express brands Putin's attacks on children as monstrous.
Vlad's war's not going to plan is the front of the Daily Star this morning. They're leading with pictures of the moment a Ukrainian farmer took one of the Russians' army armoured vehicles and towed it.
I mean, it's surreal, isn't it, actually? So you've got this farmer trying to tow off with a tractor, a tank, saying, get off my land. Going through those stories and much more, we're welcoming Petri Hoskin and the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Robert, first of all, why is the convoy so much behind schedule? Is it something as simple as they've run out of fuel?
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's very interesting that the defence intelligence sources, both in London and in Washington, were briefing yesterday. They're way behind. Eamonn, we're on 100 hours of this now. It marks an interesting point, as a colleague of yours pointed out to me, that it was 100 hours in Gulf War I that the ground operation took place. I don't think that they were expecting it to be as quick as that, but it's going a lot slower. And one of the things we will be talking about is indiscriminate rocketry that they're using, which for me is a sign of desperation. I'd love to talk about the convoy. It's on my front page as we come through in a minute.
Well, let's go then to those victims of war, very much from this indiscriminate shelling that you're talking about, Petri.
Cluster bombs involved in this.
Yeah, you've chosen the front of the Daily Mirror, Petri. And of course, a lot of people familiar with you coming in and reviewing the papers on breakfast here. But of course, you have huge experience of being a war reporter. In fact, you've suffered shrapnel wounds and covered many, many terrible atrocities. What's your assessment of this and the victims of war, so many of them civilians?
Unfortunately and sadly and tragically, it's always the civilians, isn't it, that pay the price. And Bosnia was where I saw most of this. And what strikes me is how familiar and similar these images are from what I witnessed in Bosnia.
Same landscape.
Same landscape, same type of people, same buildings.
Yep.
And also the same dynamic, if you like, certainly at the beginning, because Serbia was the bigger power, taking on the smaller power, and then it fractured and there was lots of infighting. And this is what concerns me about the civilians, is that if Vladimir Putin believed that Ukraine would give up so quickly because he was somehow in his mind liberating them, then what does he do with the people there? What does he do if people are captured? What happens to those civilians? Now, in Bosnia, what happened to those civilians is that they filled mass graves. That's what happened to those civilians. It's particularly boys and men, but women too. And the tragedy of seeing these faces, it's been very triggering. I kind of thought that I had a distance from Bosnia, but actually looking at this, the similarities, the sizes and the people and the displacement, and my absolute fear is that we will see scenes that we saw in Bosnia with Ukrainians, because the Russians don't have the infrastructure to capture and retain these people if they are against Russia.
And look at these awful stories. I mean, this young girl, Paulina, this other 6-year-old child involved in this. And the headlines scream out, "Show this to Putin," which is very, very relevant. How on earth could he defend that?
Would he care? I mean, that was my first thing, to show it to Putin, and he'll go, cost of war.
Yeah.
You know, that you're on my land.
Been hearing,
You know, you're in my country. That's what he thinks.
Okay.
I don't know whether it will make a difference.
Negotiations, Robert, yesterday, for what they were worth, got underway on the Belarus border yesterday. You go to The Guardian to talk about this.
Yes. Got underway. That's it.
Yeah.
Putin has a personal vendetta with Zelenskyy. And Zelenskyy is a bit of a media star. He knows how to handle the cameras, and he's been very, very good at it. And this will grate with Putin. Maureen Dowd of the New York Times had it. You have to remember that, I'm sorry to be heightist about this, but she concludes Putin is 5'6" and he really wants to be 5'7". And the image of Putin has been so much, and this is what's so odd about him. I'm sure people have talked about it. It isn't Botox.
We had a biographer on who said he was mad.
It isn't Botox, it's steroids. And he's been going steadily crazy ever since that it didn't seem to be such a good idea to be going back to the Soviet Union in the sort of communist style. And he's got mysticism, big time. And he sees himself as a kind of czar.
What's he on steroids for? What do we know?
Well, I don't know. I think that he's bashed himself up a bit with his judo and so on. But he is a man not that much younger than me, and he wants to pretend that he's a strapping, fighting 30 or 40-year-old. There is a lot of narcissism in.
But I mean,
and
we've seen that, haven't we, with him riding with his, topless on a horse. He wants to have that physique, so it makes absolute sense to me, now that you say it, that he would take steroids to boost himself up.
But the circle round him that's so interesting. I think we really should get Sir Simon Russell Beale in, the star of The Last Days of Stalin, because it's that sort of era. When you see him talking to Sukhoi and to Gerasimov, his two defence chiefs, I mean, they're better than the waxworks look of the Chinese Politburo. I mean, people, I think, must be seriously worried about what he wants to do, because the mission that he has asked for is not doable.
Yes.
You can't take and hold with 120, 100. They talk about 200,000. The telephone number figures don't work, and he's got no reserves.
Right. What about how likely is a coup against him? Because that's what the West are hoping for.
At the moment, not. And they're talking about coup because the system is so cowed. But what I think that will happen is that there's obviously a lot going on in Russia. They're depressed. They're absolutely down. The fact that so many people can come on the streets, I know it's only a few thousand, but the fact that you have to arrest 3,000 demonstrators say something. And brilliant old Ukrainians, I mean, they do know the media business. They know it as well as the Russians. They blanked out Russian social media, official social media, and put up memorials to the war dead yesterday. So he's losing that initiative, which will enrage him. And unfortunately, this is where we get to your convoys, the mass rocketry on Kharkiv yesterday. But the convoy, it's rather like Blucher, the general who helped out at Waterloo with Wellington, looking at Paris afterwards in the victory parade. What a place to siege and sack. It's a perfect target.
Perfect.
And a perfect target. Let's just add,
we were talking about this, weren't we?
They're very good at this, apparently. The Ukrainian command is very professional at guerrilla tactics, dispersing the command, hitting with ambushes, and we haven't seen the full force of their drones. Oh, well, perhaps they haven't gotten it. Russia isn't using its air power. Why? They do not want to commit their planes. They're worried about it. The Russian propaganda has been putting out, we've got total air control. It is absolutely clear, and it was confirmed by the briefings last night, Russia does not have total control of the airspace, because we know that Ukraine has access to Turkish drones. NATO countries not involved. The key NATO country is the local power, and it's a big power, and it's got as big an army almost as Russia, and that's Turkey.
OK, guys, we've got to leave it there just for the moment. 30 minutes now before 7 o'clock. Petri and Robert will be back in an hour's time with more stories from the papers. For the moment, thank you both very much indeed.
Okay, time now to take a look at some more of today's headlines. The Prime Minister says the UK will put maximum pressure on President Putin ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today. Boris Johnson says Vladimir Putin must fail and will feel the consequences after attacking Ukraine.
Russia has been suspended from all FIFA and UEFA competitions. This is the football governing body of Europe and the world, followed the invasion of Ukraine. The men's national team in Russia was due to take part in this month's playoffs for a place at the World Cup. And UEFA has also ended its sponsorship deal with the Russian energy company Gazprom. They sponsor the Champions League.
In other news, the social care sector could face extra pressure from the unmet need of people who avoided these services during the first and second wave of the pandemic. That's according to a report by the King's Fund. The report found requests for support from older people to local authorities in England went down from 1.37 million in 2019 to 1.34 million the following year.
NHS leaders and cancer charities are urging people not to delay vital symptom checks, rather than letting the fear of cancer diagnosis stop them getting help. In a new campaign, the NHS says the disease is much more treatable in early stages.
OK, the pandemic has caused a huge backlog in dental appointments, leading to people reportedly being forced to pay double for dental care, with pensioners being hit the hardest.
Well, the man beside me now, Dr. Milad Shadru, is a dentist. He's not only a dentist, he's also known as the singing dentist. And I suppose, Dr. Shadru, this is the singing thing is about a lot of people dread the dentist's chair. and this is your way of making it a bit more palatable.
Absolutely, yes. It just started randomly one day. It was an accident. A patient didn't come in, so I did a little parody of a famous song, and people seemed to enjoy it.
Designed for kids or people in general?
It started out kind of for kids, but the parents started watching it, and now I kind of pick and choose songs to target different demographics.
Well, look, we're going to show you what Dr. Milad does here in terms of with this Soothe You, Ease You in the dentist chair. And then there's this very serious side to all of this about funding of dentists and dentistry as a career. Here he is.
The dentist isn't your favorite place, and I know you don't want to go. Me and my nurse sitting here, we're wondering why you hate us so. We talk for hours and hours about preventing gum disease and tooth decay, but you don't listen to me. You keep on eating sweets and smoking 20 a day. That's why I'm singing out, girl, you know you need to brush twice a day, then get that floss in between. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm Mr. SD, please hear me now, boy. You know you need to brush twice a day, then get that floss in between.
That's what it's all about, getting to the flossing bit and needing to brush.
Yeah, so what is the situation then in the world of dentistry? Because we know that the pandemic had effects on people being able to get appointments, but we're hearing pensioners are really struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, everybody is struggling, even dentists. There is a huge backlog because of us being forced to close down. Even in my clinic now, we're still working through that because that created a load of reparative work then being needed to be done instead of just concentrating on prevention, which is what we were always trying to do. So we're now just catching up and trying to get people back in where they haven't been able to be seen for so long.
And it's always more serious, isn't it? Once the pain gets in there, the decay is in there, you've got more to do, and people are so far down the line. I mean, they don't need to be seen in 3 weeks' time. They need to be seen today or tomorrow.
Absolutely, and we just don't have the capacity to do that, especially within the NHS system. And the way the contract kind of runs in the NHS, you have a capacity and you have a certain target. Once you hit that target, you don't get paid extra for doing any more work. So it becomes a difficult system to work with.
There's no incentive then.
No, and it's been like that since 2006 when the contract was brought in, and it's always been a bit of a difficult system to work in. No extra funding has been put into it. Since 2009, they've tried to pilot changes to it, and 13 years on, there is no change.
So some people are finding that they can't get access to an NHS dentist, they're going private, they can't afford it. The net result is people's teeth in general are in worse condition, presumably. And you say the older folk are struggling. Are the children also affected by this?
Well, yeah, because if we can't do the routine care, then children can't be seen for that prevention. The best dentistry is no dentistry. We always say that. If you can prevent the problems, it's always going to be much better. And that's where I think the funding needs to be applied. And the ethos is there, but the actual application of it is just not happening. And that is largely down to the contract and also the workforce now. So many dentists have left the NHS and new dentists just don't want to work in that system.
Yeah. Talking about the system, the government, if we had a government minister here now, they would say, oh, no. We have just ploughed £50 million of extra funding into all of this. Why does that not solve the problem?
Yeah, that was interesting. So that 50 million, it sounds great. That was provided to dentists that chose to take it. I know none that have chosen to take it.
Why?
Because that was to increase your activity out of hours. So not...
meaning Saturdays, Sundays,
and evenings. So you've already got a really stressed out workforce that are doing 8, 9, 10 hours a day of stressful NHS dentistry, trying to ram as many people as we possibly can in, then you want that same group to work more and work on weekends, spend more time away from their family.
So what do you need? More dentists?
We definitely need more
but
dentists.
also just put a word out for dental nurses, incidentally.
Absolutely. And we have a workforce that's totally untapped in dental therapists. They have the skill set to do...
What is a dental
Never
therapist?
had one.
We have hygienists that can do the gum care and the preventive care. We have dentists that can do everything. Therapists are kind of in the middle, and they can do routine care. They can do checkups, fillings, they can see children, and they're able to do that by themselves privately, but not on the NHS. The NHS won't allow them to open
So
that
basically this is an advanced form of a dental nurse, is it?
Hygienist. Yes.
Hygienist.
They're in between that. And they are ready and willing to do this work, but the NHS just doesn't seem to allow them to do it. Yet privately, they can.
There have been some horrible statistics about the state of children's teeth. I mean, are you able to tell us about the number of kids going into hospital and things with problems?
Oh, gosh, I think dentistry is the #1 reason for children being admitted to hospital. It's not accidents, falling out of between 5 and 9, it's the #1 reason. For general anaesthetic, gas them, take all the teeth out.
So
in the UK.
I'm a bit lost here. Why would you go to A&E or hospital for something like that? Is it because simply they can't get into their local surgery?
It's because the problem is so far gone.
Yes.
The only thing left to do now is take all the baby teeth out.
Oh,
and doing that,
how
you're going to need
awful.
to do that under general anaesthetic. It's horrible for dentists, horrible for the children, the family. And losing baby teeth early has massive consequences with the developing adult teeth. Yeah.
You see, I know from when I was a kid, I look back and I smile now. I mean, I have pretty decent teeth, but how I have no idea. Because every Friday, my dad used to come with me and my brothers, and he used to bring us in bags of sweets. I mean, a paper bag full of fruit pastels, wine gums, all sorts of chew stuff, you know, that would pull out your teeth and whatever. And that was your treat on a Friday. And when I look at it, there was no sort of thing. We weren't aware of being educated as to what you shouldn't have, or soft drinks and all that sort of thing. So one would have imagined that it has come on, things have advanced, and kids are aware.
Dentists are scary now. I took my kids to the dentist, and they got up a picture of a donkey and showed my son what he would look like if he carried on sucking his thumb, these huge donkey teeth. And they said biscuits and chocolate only on Saturdays.
Okay.
And which is a bit mean.
I guess what they were trying to get through that is the frequency. So we know frequency of sugar attack is important, and more important than kind of the amount. So if you want, I mean, we would never say don't give your children a treat, but if you do it around lunch or as a dessert after supper or so, you know, that can be their treat and it won't affect the teeth as much. That donkey thing's interesting, though. I haven't ever used that.
Yeah, well, we do threaten it. Every time that thumb goes near his mouth, we're like, we want to look like a donkey.
Donkey teeth for you.
So basically, when it comes to funding, and everybody is, you know, competing for government funding on all sorts of levels, what is your message? What are you saying out there? Because you're saying, you know, if you've got the money, if you pay double or whatever, you may jump the queue, but if you don't...
Yeah, if you don't, what's going to happen? I mean, the government 100% need to look at this. Dentists have been saying this forever. We've been writing in, we've been trying to get some kind of reform happening. It's just not happening quick enough. It's time also to think about dentistry as we do with medicine. With medicine, we have emergency services. If I've got terrible gut pain and I can't function, I don't go to my GP and say, hello, I'm rolling around on the floor. I'll go to hospital, A&E will see me, get me out of that emergency state, and then I can see my GP to prevent the issues. Hospitals don't have provision to do emergency dental care.
Of course not, of course not. Listen, thanks for highlighting this today, Doctor. I really appreciate it. Keep on singing and keep on doing what you're doing. And a big hero's just recognition of dental nurses, which I believe are very hard to recruit as well, but they do a great job. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you
very much indeed. Here's the weather. Let's get an update.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon and welcome to a new month. A chilly start out there, but plenty of sunshine as March begins. However, it is damp still in the southeast, having seen a weather front stall through the night and really slow down. And in fact, this weather front links back to a warm front, which is going to push north once again later in the day and through much of Wednesday. So make the most of the sunny start, because the sunshine isn't going to last much longer than the next 24 hours. In fact, for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, a chilly start with those blue skies. However, apart from a few showers in the far north and west of Scotland, it's a fine day in these areas. And with light winds, it's going to feel pleasant enough, 8 or 9 Celsius. In the south, though, increasingly cloudy and damp. Light outbreaks of rain mostly, but turning more persistent for parts of Cornwall later on, and not feeling so pleasant under that persistent drizzle. Now, the cloud and the rain in the south makes some progress further north this evening and overnight, reaching Northern Ireland, reaching Northern England by the early hours of Wednesday. Always the steadiest and most persistent rain there across Wales and the southwest. Scotland, meanwhile, keeps the clear skies and the light winds, and so temperatures dipping. Another frosty start to the day on Wednesday. But the blue skies this time don't last. That is, a lot of cloud in the south pushes into central and southern Scotland by the afternoon. Increasingly damp for the central belt, for much of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland as well. Some drier interludes in the south and the east, but for most it's increasingly breezy, cloudy, and would just keep the sunshine there in the far north of Scotland. Otherwise, it is going to turn into a dull and damp day for many. Another dull and damp day to come on Thursday, and that only slowly clearing eastwards during Friday, but it will clear in time for the weekend with more sunshine to come then.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Satellite images show a 40-mile-long tank convoy leading to Kyiv on day 6 of the Russian invasion.
7 o'clock is the time. A very good morning to you. It's Tuesday, the 1st of March. And if you're watching in Wales, we say congratulations to you on this St. David's Day.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. We're live across your TV, your radio and online.
Coming up this morning, Russian forces have launched renewed attacks on the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv and Kharkiv, including a government building. We'll have detail and footage of that very shortly.
Boris Johnson has said the UK will continue to bring maximum pressure to bear on Russia ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today.
It comes as the International Criminal Court prosecutor announces he will open an investigation into potential war crimes in Ukraine. In an address late last night, President Zelenskyy accused Russia of war crimes.
And don't forget, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Latest and an update on those pictures coming in of missile strikes. Let's go to our security editor, Mark White, who has all the details. Mark.
This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ukraine, who have just released some imagery, very sobering and concerning imagery of what appears to be a missile strike on, you can see the massive blast there on the administrative building of Kyiv, the largest city in Ukraine, the northeastern city, which has been fighting. The images that have been released clearly show the missile strike. It appears to have been taken from a CCTV camera in the city centre, and it's filmed then on a television monitor. And you can see traffic actually driving by on the streets outside of this administrative building. Now, the time indicator clock on this says that it is 8:01, I think 8:02 in the morning, Ukrainian time, and the date, the 1st of March 2022. So it appears that this just happened this morning, just after 6 a.m. local time. And you can see from the images describing it for our radio listeners, the missile coming in at high speed and hitting this huge administrative building, a government building, in the centre of Kharkiv. There is other images that have been released that appear to show the aftermath in the same area with rubble on the streets. And we can only imagine at 8 in the morning, a government building at this time, there probably were people inside. There's no indication yet on the number of casualties, but clearly a very worrying development. I should say as well, for those who are listening on radio, you can go to the GB News website, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see that very, very concerning image coming out of Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, this morning.
OK, Mark, thank you very much.
OK, and joining us now here to talk further about what's going on, former British Army officer, UN commander and Conservative MP for Beckenham, it's Colonel Bob Stewart. And we see the onslaught, we're talking there about coming in from Russia. Ukraine seems to be holding its own on many, many fronts, which begs the question, why has it been stalling for Russia?
It's all to do, in my view, with the morale of the troops. Napoleon said, morale to the physical is 3:1. What he meant was morale is actually the world beater when it comes to soldiers. What you've got is very high morale among the Ukrainian resistors, and actually very low morale among the Russians, who some of them didn't realise, some of them don't even know they're in Ukraine.
So why would that morale be low? Is it because they actually don't know what the mission is?
Yes, they haven't been really well briefed. One thing we used to do, and the British Army takes pride in, is actually explaining to the soldiers exactly what they're doing and why they're there. That has not happened to the Russians. It doesn't seem to be. If you look at the body language, Isabel, look at the body language. You're experts at body language, you two. So look at the body language of the soldiers. The Russian soldiers look lost.
Hangdog, don't they?
Yeah, OK. The Ukrainian soldiers look in command. Now, when Napoleon said morale to the physical is 3:1, I saw this in Bosnia when the commanders would say, how many men have you got under your command? And I wouldn't tell them. I'd say, how many do you think? And they'd say, between 3,000 and 4,000. I had 800. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
the morale is the physical. So these relatively few people are actually acting incredibly well because they're defending their homeland. And the question asked by people on the street to the Russian soldiers is, why are you here? This is my homeland. We're Slavs. What are you doing this for? And it's really, debilitating for them.
Yeah, of course, the question is how long that can last, is this...
Well, I mean, the Russians will win in the end, Isabel.
Yeah, but
overwhelming force will win, but what's going to happen then?
Well, also, the death toll the Russian soldiers are suffering is significant. 4,500 just in the first 5 days. That's more than the Americans suffered in 8 years in Iraq.
And their bodies aren't going home, are they?
I hear they're mobile crematoriums.
Because they don't want body bags going back to Moscow. Yeah. I mean, because this is really... Do you remember all the stuff we had with Wood and Bassett? We had a really big... That's not happening with the Russians. So some poor mother and father are just having a knock on the door and being told, I'm afraid your son's being killed. What? Where? Sorry, can't tell you. Can we see the body? No. Now, mothers always want to see their sons' bodies. It's that awful word, closure. It's not closure ever for a mother or a father. But actually, this will have a real impact on the Russian people because actually, also, they're not sure what they're doing there.
Yeah, you say ultimately the bigger force will win, but they've then got to retain that territory.
Well, that's where the real problems come then, because, the one thing about Ukrainians, rather like the Russians, they're used to suffering. We're not here. We've never been invaded, but, there's a mentality in Ukraine.
Can you see any resemblances here between what is going on or what could go on as to what happened in Northern Ireland and the way a lot of the population saw the occupying British Army?
Yes, but up to a point, but this is more powerful. This is more powerful stuff. These are Ukrainians who love Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is their homeland. They're not Russians, they're Ukrainians. And they really deeply resent that fellow Slavs are coming into their country. For what reason? Because we want to be free, we want to be democratic, we want to actually look to the West. And why can't we? We're human beings and we're democratic. And so the real problem for the Russians will be overcoming this hugely innate feeling among the Ukrainian people that this is their country and no one should tell them what to do in it.
If Putin was removed, would that solve the problem?
Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, do you remember that old, it was a sort of Churchillian phrase, Russia is an enigma wrapped in a puzzle inside something else. But it's just, who knows? It is possible, and perhaps this is the way forward, that the sort of Russian equivalent of the men in grey suits that we have in Westminster will actually touch him on the arm and say, I think it's time you went to Sochi, you know, and actually give up, because he seems to, it doesn't seem logical to us, does it, that what he's doing. You could imagine the logic. I thought the logic would be he'd take over, you know, Donetsk, Luhansk. He's already got the Crimea. He'd actually hold those things. Those would become part of Russia.
And that would have been enough.
And that would have been enough. But he's gone further than that. He's actually attacking Kyiv, you know.
Which is a mistake, you think?
Oh, a huge mistake. Because the people, I mean, there are men taking their families out of Ukraine and then going back to fight. You know, there are people in this country saying, we're ready to go to fight. Please don't do that unless you've had military training, because actually you'll just be cannon fodder.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. If you've had military training, your choice, but don't just go if you've never done it before.
We'll be speaking to one such person who is planning to do that just after the break. But Colonel Bob Stewart, really good to talk to you. Thanks for coming into the studio.
Thanks for your perspective, Bob, as always. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you.
OK, at 7:12, let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines now. And the Prime Minister says the UK will put maximum pressure on President Putin ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today. Boris Johnson says Vladimir Putin must fail and will feel the consequences after attacking Ukraine.
Russia has been suspended from all FIFA and UEFA competitions in football following the invasion. The men's national team were due to take part in this month's playoffs for a place at the World Cup. UEFA, the European governing body, has also ended its football sponsorship deal with the Russian energy company Gazprom, which sponsors the Champions League.
Meanwhile, the Walt Disney Company is one of several major Hollywood entertainment companies to have paused releases of its films in Russia. The groups also include Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers, whose highly anticipated The Batman was due on screens in Russia on March the 3rd.
Social care sector could face extra pressure from the unmet need of people who avoided those services during the first and second pandemics. That's according to a report by the King's Fund. It found requests for support from older people to local authorities went down from 1.37 million in 2019 to 1.34 million the following year. This was in England only.
Well, as we were just saying with Colonel Bob Stewart then, we've been talking about the continued invasion of Ukraine and a number of people who've been stepping forward to try and perhaps misguidedly get involved in that. Let's cross to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who joins us from outside the Ukrainian embassy. Paul, you've met some extraordinary people over the last 24 hours since you've been there. Tell us more.
Yeah, morning, Isabel. Morning, Eamonn. Yes, some extraordinary people. Some of them coming here to the Ukrainian embassy yesterday, asking how they can get involved in supporting the Ukrainian, how they can get themselves involved in supporting the Ukrainian forces. We can speak to one of them now, actually, Jason Luck, who came to the Ukrainian embassy yesterday. Jason, thank you for speaking to us on GB News. First of all, why do you want to go and fight in Ukraine?
You know, people got the wrong idea. It's not I want to go and fight, it's just because of my family. Obviously, you know, that is my priority. Fighting isn't my priority, but it's going to be one of those inevitable things that I've got to do.
Yeah. So just to explain to our viewers, you've got your daughter who's in Nikolaev and you've got your wife and stepson who are in Mariupol.
No, Zaporozhye.
In Zaporozhye.
Not far from Mariupol.
Not far from Mariupol, yeah, which is really close to Donetsk.
Well, yeah, but Mariupol is under heavy bombardment at the moment. And like I said, we're 100 kilometres away, so who knows? Luckily, my partner, she says that everything's fine at the moment, and it's calm. Whether she's lying to me or not, I don't know, but I've heard the sirens go a few times. She said it's all calm, but I think she's telling me things to stop me worrying. I don't know what's going to happen. I honestly don't.
I mean, how have the past few weeks been for you, being here on your own in the UK with your family out there?
Well, to be honest, I would have gone weeks and weeks ago. I planned to go weeks and weeks ago, but obviously financially, it's been difficult. So, obviously, because I've got to support them and a few other families, it's been really hard. So now it's come to that point where it's going to get worse before it gets better. Well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Yeah. And like I said to you earlier, I think this is the calm before the storm.
You think there's more to come from the Russians?
I think he's got every intention of capturing Zelenskyy alive, and I think, personally speaking, I think that's his plan. Because it's too soft. You know, the way the Russians are acting at the moment is too soft.
So on Saturday you're flying to Ukraine, and then what will be your journey then? And you're taking all your equipment from your 12 years serving as a British soldier.
Well, no, it's a lot later kit than that. Yeah. I've got equipment out there, but obviously I can't get to it. Obviously because it's in the east, so it's no good to me. So I'm taking my own kit out with me that I've got. So.
And it's extraordinary that you're willing to fight for Ukraine. I know your family are Ukrainian, but you're willing to go out there and fight for them.
Yeah, but I'm Ukrainian by proxy. You know, it's my home as well. So I can't face Ukrainians if I haven't bothered to try and do anything. You know, and you know later on, you know, I'm going to need their help. They're going to need my help. Do you see what I'm saying? It's going to be like that.
Yeah. But your mum's here. How does here in the UK? How does she feel about you going out to fight for Ukraine?
Don't know. My mum is not overly keen on Yulia, and she's worried about Dasha, of course, but she's not happy about me going out there. No. I mean, we basically had a big row about it last night, so I just, you know, some people not supporting it. Even my own, you know, Yulia's not supporting it. She's saying, why are you coming? We're perfectly fine, but.
And why won't she come here to the UK?
Oh, she's got several reasons. Max, who sees me as his father, he's autistic, quite badly autistic. He's also got like disabilities because he can't walk easily. His feet are sort of sideways out. She's got that reason. Her mum's dying. Her mum's up from the Donetsk region, and she's dying. So they've not given her long to live. I mean, last I heard, this was a week ago, it was 2 months. So I can understand where she's coming from. But,
and you have experience of fighting in Ukraine. You were there a few years ago. Yeah, just tell us a bit about that, what you can tell us.
Well,
how difficult it was.
It's, you know, especially for me, because it's a different language. You know, I speak some Russian, but, you know, when you're dealing with these guys, you know, there's a lot of multinational. With us, there was a lot Georgian, even Swedes, you know, so it's a difficult one. And communication problem, you know, there's going to be communication problems. We had all that out there. We're going to have the same thing this time. It's going to be the communication. And it's, you know, with lots of foreign people wanting to fight, you know, it's going to be a very difficult situation.
Yeah, different from last time. Professional. This is a professional army you're facing, not separatists.
No, these are not, you know, guys in uniform. These are not, you know, now they've been trained. They've been trained by the Canadians, the British, the Americans. They've been trained well. You know, that is the difference. Back then, it was left to volunteer battalions, Azov, Right Sector, Adar, Nipple 1. So it's a completely different scenario now.
Listen, Jason, we wish you all the best for Saturday when you're heading out to Ukraine, right, and also for your family as well. Jason Luck there, who's heading out to Ukraine on Saturday. Many other British nationals as well heading out there, it seems, over the coming days, trying to find a route over to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainian forces.
Extraordinary story.
Just getting news coming in from the Ministry of Defence. Let's go to Mark White on this and he'll fill you in. Mark.
Well, we know that the Ministry of Defence in the UK have been providing regular updates from Defence Intelligence, which is clearly very useful for us as we're getting official assessments from their intelligence assets on the ground, their satellite imagery, and they're, of course, very close liaising with those Ukrainian troops on the ground. Now, what the UK Ministry of Defence has said is that the Russian advance on Kyiv has made little progress in the past 24 hours, probably, they say, as a result of continuing logistical difficulties. And a satellite image has been showing that huge armoured division, which is now some 40 miles long, but making little progress, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. They also say that Russian forces have increased their use of artillery both north of Kyiv and in the vicinities of Kharkiv in the northeast and Chernihiv. The use of heavy artillery, it says, in densely populated urban areas greatly increases the risk of civilian casualties. And we have got, of course, just in the last 15 minutes or so, that breaking news of a missile strike in that city, the second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv, in the northeast, a missile strike of an administrative government building right in the city centre. You can see on the image the missile going in, a huge explosion, and very concerning, of course. It's right in the city centre and there's traffic going about. We were looking at the time code and date stamp on this. It's today's date, and it was 8:02 local time, so just after 6 in the morning our time. You can see the aftermath of that as well, describing it for our radio listeners of rubble on the ground, burnt out cars, and the building clearly very significantly damaged, likely to have been people inside that building as well. One more line from the UK Ministry of Defence that I think is very significant and worth imparting. They say that the Russian military has not yet gained full control of Ukrainian airspace, and that means they're conducting quite a lot of their logistical and flight operations at night to try to limit the potential for casualties, the potential for their aircraft being shot down by these shoulder-launched missiles. So the fact that Russia, what are we now, 6 days into this conflict, still haven't got full control of Ukrainian airspace, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, I think is very significant.
OK, Mark White, thank you very much for that update. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, now for a political update, if you like. Where are number 10, the Foreign Secretary, heading to today?
Well, the Prime Minister has set off for Poland on the first leg of 2 visits that he's making today. Firstly, to Poland to deliver a speech about the unity needed amongst the West and to speak about the shared values between the United Kingdom and Poland and many of the countries in the Baltic as well, who have been working so closely with the United Kingdom. He's saying that they need to speak with one voice and continue to work together. So the Prime Minister will be meeting Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki first, before then getting on his plane again and going off to Estonia, where he will be meeting both the Prime Minister and the President of that country and the NATO Secretary-General Stoltenberg in order to bolster again that unity of the West. And of course, Estonia is one of those countries where UK troops have been going, a NATO member state, but also on that front line bordering Russia.
It's really interesting and significant that these countries are being paid attention by our Prime Minister, because often we talk about the role of the United States, the role of Germany, the role of NATO, France, whatever it happens to be. But Boris Johnson obviously sees these peripheral countries as very, very important.
Well, also, and lots of rereading of Putin's speeches, you know, in recent days, and his previous claims not that long ago to want to try and invade Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, all those countries along that way. Just in July 2015, he was making those claims.
And there are many defence sources who think that there is a risk of a domino effect, whereby Putin's ambitions do not stop at Ukraine. If he is able to take Ukraine, where do his eyes go next? Well, there's plenty of parts of the world, particularly in the Baltic that he sees of as being part of this Russian sphere of influence.
But it's so ironic that, he attacks Ukraine. I don't know where he's coming from when he talks about the Nazi regimes and whatever in Ukraine, and yet everything he's doing mirrors Hitler's advances in the Second World War.
It's really quite eerie, and talking about sort of the way that we were running up to this invasion. The word appeasement was being thrown around by many, the sort of lack of willingness for many countries to go the full hog in terms of recognising how serious this was. Indeed, if we look back to 2014, potentially, there are so many parallels that can be drawn with Putin going ahead, snatching parts of Ukraine, and the international community doing very little to condemn him for it. Potentially, he did not anticipate such a united and large response from the West because we did so little over Crimea, because we did so little over actually the Donbass as well.
So what's going on in Geneva? The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, she's heading there today. Tell us about that one.
She is. She'll be heading off a little bit later this morning to meet with other counterparts of mainly European foreign secretaries. Again, it's about that unity of message from the West. But someone else that she's meeting in Geneva is the UN representative for refugees, which of course is becoming a much greater issue, as we're seeing on the front pages of newspapers, the devastation in Ukraine, and as hundreds of thousands of people attempt to leave. Of course, we heard the first iteration of the UK's refugee policy yesterday from Priti Patel, up to 100,000 people able to come, although there has been quite a lot of criticism of that policy because it is quite limited in scope. The definition of immediate family members is relatively limited, and there are some people who you and I might think of being immediate family members who, under this current policy in its current form, would not be able to come to the UK. I understand that this is just the first iteration of this policy, though. We're expecting to hear some more from Priti Patel over the coming days, and there's certainly a whole heap of political pressure on this. We saw a YouGov poll yesterday saying 77% of Britons want visa-free migration for those refugees.
That's interesting, that's surprising, and I'm not sure that would necessarily reflect a GB News audience's view on that. So
Who knows? But I mean, it would bring us in line with the European Union if we were to do that.
It's very, very interesting. It's a high figure, that, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it's. I think it reflects what people see in Ukraine. You see sort of these Western-facing streets.
They don't see these people as economic migrants,
No, certainly not. But also they see the hope that people may be wanting to come here temporarily, to move back to a free, sovereign and independent Ukraine once this nightmare is over.
Tom, look, we've got to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for that update. Very comprehensive. Appreciate that. Russia's national football team and indeed their club sides have been banned from world football by UEFA and FIFA. We're going to be talking about that to Paul Coit right after this break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We want to talk to Paul Coit now about how the whole Ukrainian situation and the invasion is impacting on sport. FIFA and UEFA, Paul, have come out with big rulings, and I would have thought the only bad thing about what they've decided is it took them so long.
Yeah, I agree. It should have been done in 4 minutes, not 4 days. We talked about it yesterday, and I assumed that would be announced. But the thing is, I just feel I can nitpick about it, but I just think it was done for almost like the wrong reasons. It was done because the pressure got great because they had no choice. It's all very well saying, oh yeah, well, we'll let the Russian teams play in the Euros or in the qualifier for the World Cup under a different name, with no flag and with national anthem.
Nonsense.
It is nonsense, and it's all because the link that they've had with Putin in the past, but now they've had no choice and they've had to ban them from it.
Including this massive sponsorship of the Champions League by Gazprom, the energy company from Russia.
Tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah.
So you see, there's only a certain amount of sponsors that the Champions League have. And you see that around the grounds. They're the only people that are allowed to advertise around the Champions League. Gazprom, huge. So we're talking tens of millions. So they've been excluded as well. But what is interesting is that we saw the Court of Arbitration for Sport get involved with Valieva only about a week or so ago.
That's the ice skater.
The Russians have a lot of form. So if anything happens when it comes to the Russians not being happy with or excluded for sport, they will go to them. And I'm pretty sure that within the next couple of days, they'll go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport and say, on what grounds have we been excluded? Because is there any law that says that if there's a war involved, that we have to be excluded from competition? So if that happens, and then they rule and then say, well, OK, well, under those grounds, legally, you can compete, then does every other country then step away and say, well, we won't play?
They must.
They will.
And then by default, they say, well, there we are. The World Cup belongs to you because nobody else is going to play. It's never going to come to that, but it will get legal. I'm certain about that.
And it extends beyond football. We're seeing what we're talking about, the Olympics there, but we've got the Winter Paralympics coming up. We've got the tennis players saying they won't play unless Russians say they're neutral. It's going right across the board. And that has to be a good thing. But I also wonder if there's a question about whether or not this means sport will be viewed in a different way going forward, because there's been years of people urging sportsmen to take this approach, in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, wherever it might be. Is this changing the role of sport? I don't know.
Again, as we said yesterday, it's a lovely idea to be able to separate sport from politics.
Yeah.
But these days, it is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. You don't really want to hear tennis players that are saying, well, it's nothing to do with me, so I'm going to go ahead and play. We would prefer, personally, to hear a tennis player, especially a Russian tennis player, actually talk about this and say how bad it is. It's like the Paralympics as well. With the Paralympics, there's a decision that's going to be made tomorrow, because that's happening in Beijing with the Winter Paralympic Games. What do they do about Russia? They've gone over there and they've got to make a decision, but there's no ruling, again, that includes war. There's something called an Olympic truce, which they can say that Russia have violated the Olympic truce, which involves war. But it's a very tricky thing, but really, it should be across the board.
Stan Collymore writing in the Mirror today, he talks about football needs a moral code and a robust body to enforce it. He's absolutely right. There may still be repercussions for Chelsea on all of this, but I just want to get back to European football and the UEFA League. Just bring me, because I'm just not sure in this. If Russian clubs are out, that means Spartak, Moscow are out. What happens? They were in the draw.
Yeah.
I don't know who drew them.
Well, the thing is, what happens to them, I'm not sure exactly where they're out. So whether it just means a buy...
You just go through
I
a buy.
assume so.
Who got them? Who got them? Was it Rangers? No.
You know what? When it comes to Spartak Moscow, I don't know. I don't know, but this has been announced.
It should be a buy.
But the thing is, we're also looking at the difference between teams and then individual sports, because then we've got F1, we've got tennis. Does that mean individuals will be not allowed to compete? Although we've got Elena Svitolina has said that she's playing in Monterrey. She's down to play Anastasia Potapova, who's Russian, but she will not play unless it's announced that that Potapova will play not under the Russian flag, will be a neutral athlete. She is then happy to play against her if she's a neutral athlete. I don't know, individual sports, I understand, it's different. Sports, when it comes to teams and national teams, then I don't think there's any question that they should be involved.
OK, folks, want to know what you think about that. Tweet us on GB News if you've got a strong feeling. But basically, the national team of Russia, no matter what it's called, no matter what name it goes under, it is out. It is banned from world football. UEFA says so. FIFA says so on that. Gazprom, which you'll see popping up on your television station as the sponsor of the Champions League, that is no longer happening. Yeah. And they are the Russian gas company, and that Champions League deal has been cancelled. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
We're going to take a break now. After that, we'll be back with the papers today. We're joined by the defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, and the broadcaster and former war reporter, Petri Hoskett.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Okay, the time is 7:38. Let's take a look at just a couple of this morning's newspapers. This one, the most poignant of them all, the Sun newspaper, running that beautiful picture of a girl. It has the headline, "Her name was Paulina." They're focusing on her. Of course, she was one of the child victims yesterday in Putin's invasion of Ukraine, 10 years old. And she was in a car travelling with her parents when she came under fire from the Russians.
And the Telegraph, that headline just blazes out, "Show this to Putin." And that is regarding Paulina's death and a 6-year-old child who was tragically featured dying on camera, as it turned out yesterday. War crimes, should they be brought against Russia already? That is the talk. Robert Fox, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I wrote about this last week and suggested it should happen, because once you start shelling the kind of weaponry they're using, come on, this is not targeted surgical strike. We journalists love the cliches, don't we? It's not. They're indiscriminate. They hit large centres of population. If you're going to use things like the barrages of rockets
And cluster bombs.
And cluster bombs. The BM-30 is a cluster bomb weapon system that they brought that up. And the TOS-1 Alpha, which has a horrible thing called a thermobaric bomb. That is a large-scale fuel-air bomb. It sucks up the air and sets light to it. So you just incinerate huge areas. And that's where not only Putin, but all his generals and the artillerymen, and they are largely men, that are firing it, actually they should all be prosecuted.
And that may,
they know
well
what
happen.
they're doing.
Yeah.
This is the point.
Yeah.
They can't kid you otherwise. Yeah.
But Putin doesn't care, does he? The idea of a war tribunal. I mean, why would he care about that?
Well, you think he would care if he sees that young girl's face?
You'd hope.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Putin is in a fantasy world now.
Yeah, I don't think he...
And the danger is, of course, as he becomes more desperate and becomes more rattled, more angry. We had someone on, I think just yesterday, saying about if you have a rat in the corner, you know, they will eventually attack you if they're cornered enough.
But that's the whole thing. I mean, anybody who's ever had a toddler in a strop knows that you've got to build what's known as a golden bridge for them to get out of that strop. You've got to give them a way out, otherwise it's an impasse. Yeah. So the question is, what is the way out that Putin is given? Now, that's got to come from Ukraine. That can't come from anybody else.
Well, that was the thought bubble above those two guys that he announced that he was putting nuclear weapons on standby to, Suboy and Gerasimov. They know him well. By the way, the younger one, the defence minister, I think is the clue to the whole thing, because he's relatively new to this position. And he is seeing a lot of people being put into the line who don't know why they're there. But he must know, and if Gerasimov must have made him aware of this, they haven't got enough reserves. If you're really going to invest, that is, surround and occupy the whole country, you would need the whole force that they've got. 150,000. You would need to sustain them. You would need to prepare a reserve.
But also,
you could see, can I just finish, please, with this? You could see on paper that you've got a potential call-out of 900,000. No, I've seen this in papers. It is nonsense. You are not going to call out territorial forces from Siberia to do this. And this is why I think there is real strain in Russia, and we're not preparing ourselves for the worst-case scenario. Yeah, terrible things are happening, really terrible things in Ukraine. But if we have a corresponding implosion in Russia, which I suspect is 50-50 on the cards now, it is going to be horrific, and it will be a global disaster.
We were talking to somebody this morning about whether or not there might end up being a palace coup in all of this. I mean, I suppose one of the comforts, is that of the people at that very extremely strange table that President Putin has, they're the guys that hold the keys to the nuclear weapons, not actually President Putin himself.
Again, it depends on his rule of them and his power over them, and the way that they see their bread as being buttered, because who would replace Putin if they deposed him? So threw him over. So I don't know whether that is the key. If we're going to try to negotiate with any degree with Putin, there has to be a sense of what he's not going to want to lose face. So what do we give him so that he doesn't lose face? And I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, there is a huge problem in the middle of that. The whole apparatus. Security, the kind of guys that tried to kill the Skripals, Litvinenko, the whole works, the people who are advising people to do dastardly things in Syria and so on, the Wagner group, they're all dependent on Putin. Putin goes down, an awful lot of them go down with it, and they're well aware of that. And that is why, not for nothing, do senior diplomats of the UK, that is not a euphemism, but I'm just not allowed to name them, but who have been talking to me about dealing with him, they were saying, and one of our senior lady ambassadors was explaining to me, it is like a mafia system, with which I'm well acquainted, because I've worked in Sicily and Italy a great deal, and it's clan-dependent. And this is why they're trying to work out what happens when the gang chief goes. What do they do? Then you will probably get something like the equivalent. I don't think, although there's a strong mafia element, you'll probably get a mafia war right across the piece. But this is the thing where I find in Europe and the States, but particularly in Europe, the thinking isn't dynamic about it. I mean, we've seen it with the two most vulnerable European powers to all this because they're so dependent on Russian gas, Germany and Italy is potentially in a terrible state from this. They're thinking, how can we save ourselves? How can we save this? I mean, the Mario Draghi recovery program, from which he got $240 billion out of the EU to do it, is completely in pieces now because they have the prospect of getting no gas. Because it's not only Russian gas, but it's gas that comes through Ukraine pipelines, which are being blown up at the moment.
But the question is, isn't it, what would Putin accept and what would Ukraine accept as a way out of this? Is Putin going to just say, look, you know, I'm having Ukraine and that's the only thing that I want? Or is there a middle line? I don't think Zelenskyy is prepared to
about whether or not they might give him the Donbass, to occupy it in return for a ceasefire. Who knows where it might go? But it could all depend on the Russian ordinary citizens, and we're seeing, aren't we, more people protesting than ever before. We're seeing people unable to go down into the subway because their Apple Pay and their Google's been frozen as part of the sanctions, unable to get cash out of ATMs. Yeah. How long will they tolerate?
The Russians are not, you know, they are a fighting nation, aren't they? Even internally, they're not against overthrowing somebody, but it doesn't happen very often. But when it does, it's significant. And I think that the young Russians are leading the way in this. And that to me is real bravery, because you're going out on the streets, you know you're going to be arrested, and who knows what else after that because of treason laws, right? So these are really brave young people out on the streets saying, this is not what we want and we won't fight it. It's going to be very interesting to see if conscripts have to be pulled together. They may be the answer.
Someone that hasn't come up in discussion much is Alexei Navalny, and I wonder if anything happens to Putin. You know, of course, he's the opposition leader in Russia, been jailed and poisoned and all the rest of it, whether or not he'll make a comeback and how he's viewing. Of course, we can never know because he is in a Russian jail at the moment.
Well, and not in good shape at all.
No.
And this is a typical piece of Putin. But it's very interesting, Eamonn, where we are with all of this, talking of the media. It's very interesting how little frontline reporting there is, because you can't have front lines. Terrible old thing that we've all done around here, you and I particularly. There are no embeds. There are no accredited correspondents, neither with the Ukraine forces nor with the Russian forces. Brave as a lion, Ant Lloyd has been reporting brilliantly, but when the battle has been quite tight, namely in the Donbass, he was terrific. We're getting no frontline reporting. I am not making personal criticism, because with these indiscriminate aerial weapons, it would be foolish. It would be suicidal to do it. But what we're getting is this extraordinary dialogue through social media. And the Ukrainians have turned out to be a lot better at it than the Russians did, because they're blanking out a lot of the Russian stuff. And this is being seen, that they're putting out their own tweets, their own Instagrams, and so on. And unfortunately, we're getting too much reporting here, and I am an absolute criminal in this. There are too many old guys looking at maps from a great distance and saying what we think is going on. I haven't a clue what is going on the front line.
We're going to find out what's going on the front line right now. For the moment, you two, thank you very much indeed. We'll have you back in an hour, because we're going to Kyiv and we're going to speak to a journalist who's there in the thick of things. The Kyiv Independent, she writes for us. See there, it's Asami Terajima, who is in the capital. And Asami, how are you feeling? What is it like where you are? Thanks for your time today.
Thank you for having me as well. So it's not just me, but the Ukrainian people are concerned about what's going to happen in the future, because no one knows what the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is planning. We don't know what he's going to do in the future. We don't know if he's decided on the plan either. But what we can do right now is stay calm, not panic, and try to focus on what we can do right now and what the things that we have control over, which is our safety, and what we can do to help Ukraine to fight off Russian aggression.
You know, Sammy, we were just talking here with our newspaper reviewers in the studio, and they were talking about the media war, and they were saying that Putin hasn't got a grip on this, that this is working much better in Ukraine because of social media. Would you agree with that?
I think that we can never underestimate what Putin is planning. So we need to stay we need to stay alert, and we should just continue to be alarmed and to focus on what's happening right now and react to the things that's happening rather than forecast the future that it's difficult for us to understand what he's going to plan, because he's made lots of decisions that we've never expected, right? So yeah.
And I want to speak to you, Asami, not just as a journalist, because of course you can speak in your professional capacity trying to assess the situation, but I want to speak to you as a resident living in Kyiv and how it feels to know that there is this Russian column advancing towards you. I mean, are you fearful of what the next days and weeks bring, and are you planning to stay?
So I'm planning to stay for the foreseeable future, because I've grown up in Ukraine, I've grown up in Kyiv, and Ukrainian people have been so nice to me. I've always felt home here. So I want to give back to the nation by reporting on ground and delivering news of what's happening in Ukraine to the world.
But what do you think will happen to you and other citizens if Russia does take Kyiv?
Well, I know that the Ukrainian military is stronger than it was in 2014. Ukrainian military will do its best, and we will also try to do our best to the best of our ability. We don't know what's going to happen. We're all ready to, head to the bomb shelter if something even more severe happens. We've already packed our emergency bags and we have documents ready. But for now, we just react to things that's happening right now, and that is, Russian forces have been storming into Ukraine. They have been attacking various parts of Ukraine, and we just need to focus on what we can do right now.
Well, I think we've got live pictures from the Ukraine-Polish border here of the refugee situation, Asami, because this is what would greet you, obviously, if you left the country. And we're hearing those figures assembling in areas like that are more than 500,000 people who have had to flee your country. What are you hearing about that rush for people to get out of Ukraine and head to Poland and head to Hungary?
Yes, I personally know a few people who have been struggling to cross the border. Yes, I know, but there are lots of people who left Kyiv, and not only Kyiv, but other parts of Ukraine for more safety abroad. But this is not something that every Ukrainian can afford, considering that the average wage in Ukraine is approximately $600. So not everyone can afford to just go abroad one day, right? So and also some people would rather stay as well. I've been walking around Kyiv yesterday when I'm going to the grocery store and supermarket. People were calm. They were stocking up on several days of food because obviously they don't know what they could expect. But no one was panicking. No one was panic buying. Everyone was just encouraging each other. I saw a man sing by himself, like, "We'll all be fine. We'll all be fine." And I really felt, every time this kind of challenges happen in Ukraine, it only brings Ukrainian more united, more stronger than ever. So whatever Russia does, I know that Ukrainians will resist.
Now, I can understand you feeling like that and wanting to feel like that, but do you actually believe that man when he says, "We'll be fine, we'll be fine"?
Well, we don't know if we're going to be fine, right? We don't know. We cannot forecast the future, but we can do our best to stay strong and to stay calm and do what's needed right now.
Truly admirable attitude, and we've been hearing and doing so many interviews in recent weeks about people in Kyiv and the preparations that they should be making, things like boarding up windows to minimise the risk from shrapnel wounds, making sure they've got first aid kits and tourniquets. I mean, the way you're describing it sounds quite different from that. Like, people are going to the shops, maybe buying a bit more, but not panic buying. Have you taken those kind of immediate medical precautions?
Yes, we've done. We've made sure to cover the windows with several layers of cloth. So it's not that we're not doing anything to prepare. Obviously, we're looking at the news 24/7. We're doing everything that the government recommends and what others have recommended. So we've already packed. We're ready to evacuate whenever. No. not everyone is planning on evacuating, but if severe things happen, then we are ready to head to the bomb shelter at any moment. For those of us who are still at our apartments, including me, yeah.
Well, look, absolutely, as Isabel says, you stay safe, and thanks for your time today. Really appreciate hearing everything from inside Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's talk now about those people who are trying to make their way to safety out of Ukraine. We can speak to Nadia Pilipchuk, a Ukrainian lawyer who's been living in the UK for over a decade. What's your assessment of the way the UK has responded to the crisis so far in terms of who they're allowing in?
Good morning. Well, it's very unclear as of now, as I've literally spoken just two families who are trying to make their way to the UK since they have their loved ones in the UK, and one of the families have been allowed to enter the UK, another one was denied with exactly the same circumstances. So as of now, it's completely, there is no policy as yet. There is no clear guidance on how the Ukrainian cases will be handled. What we just definitely know is that the British nationals can bring their family members, but what about the rest of the Ukrainians who've stuck in the UK and who've got their loved ones? So we are all just waiting for the Priti Patel and Boris Johnson just to release it. Well, we've had the news, but unfortunately there is nothing as yet published, so whatever lawyers can rely on in order to assist those who are trying to come to the UK.
So politicians, they can speak, they can say anyone with immediate family will be able to join them in this country, but that needs to be proven, really. Nadia, it was fascinating to hear you say one person's application was accepted, another refused. Talk us through that. We're looking at scenes here on the Ukraine-Polish border. So you get to somewhere, you get to a different country, or you make an application and you're refused. Where do you go back to? What happens?
This is what really furious. The family that has been refused. So this is a brother who was trying to bring his sister together with two young children under 5, and they've been told to go back to French border and seek asylum there. So he was the one, the brother was the one who said that I am guaranteeing that I will support my sister financially. We don't need any support of public funds. Just please allow my sister to be with me. I guarantee that she will stay with me. I'll provide the accommodation, all the financial support, and she's been denied. So, well, it's obvious that we will be bringing those cases, and in case there will be further refusal, we'll be bringing the judicial review cases, and because it's clearly a breach of human rights for someone, it's a clear right for someone to have their loved ones here in the UK, especially if they don't have anybody else elsewhere in Europe, and they just fled the war, the true war.
Of course, 100,000 extra visas were promised yesterday by the government, and Priti Patel has said that a further announcement will be made today. And given that at the moment we understand around 500,000 Ukrainians have fled the country, that's about a fifth of those refugees fleeing from the country. Do we need to go further then, do you think?
Well, we believe so. Although there are many Ukrainians who decided to stay, they don't want to leave their homes. They want to be there with their families, despite what happening is there, which is we clearly believe is a genocide, because it's a disaster. I've just spoken literally a few minutes ago to someone in Kharkiv. They are short in food, they are short in water, in medicine. It's clearly, well, Kharkiv is the city that's, well, 80% of people who speak Russian there, and Putin claiming that they are protecting Russian-speaking society there in Ukraine, it just makes us even furious as lawyers. And here in the UK, apart from helping the refugees, we will be working on the policies and asking the government to bring to the justice those who are supporting the propaganda, who are spreading the lie and fake news all over the world, including the UK.
Nadia Pilipchuk is an immigration lawyer. She's based in London. Thank you very much indeed for your time and for your analysis of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, we'll be speaking to Marina Litvinenko, whose husband was assassinated at the hands of Putin. That's after this short break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Satellite images of a 40-mile-long tank convoy heading to Kyiv on day 6 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Good morning. It's 8:01 on Tuesday, the 1st of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
You're welcome to the programme, and we are live on your TV, on your radio and online. Coming up this morning,
Russian forces have launched renewed attacks on the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv and Kharkiv, including a government building this morning in Kharkiv.
Boris Johnson has said the UK will continue to bring maximum pressure to bear on Russia ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today.
It comes as the International Criminal Court prosecutor announces he will open an investigation into potential war crimes in Ukraine. It follows on from an address late last night by President Zelenskyy in which he accused Russia of war crimes.
Get involved with what we are reporting today and how it affects you. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet at gbnews. Right, let's get the latest on the whole situation as things are developing. We're getting lots of footage overnight, which our security editor, Mark White, is across. Mark, over to you.
Well, the air raid sirens have sounded in the capital, Kyiv, again. That is not unusual. The bombardment and fighting in Kyiv, though, is, again, a lower intensity than it has been for recent days. But it's a city northeast in Ukraine, the second largest city of Kharkiv, where there are some very worrying developments this morning. Just over an hour ago, we brought you the breaking news of a missile strike on the main administrative headquarters in Ukraine's second largest city. That missile seen on CCTV footage released by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ukraine, and the timestamp on the footage shows that it is just after 8 in the morning Ukrainian time, so just after 6 a.m. our time, and it is today's date on that stamp. There's also footage that's emerged of the aftermath showing Freedom Square, where this missile strike took place, and there are vehicles that are apparently burnt out, rubble on the ground, understandably. Now, at 8 o'clock in the morning, bearing in mind this is the main administrative headquarters, it is likely that there would have been people inside. We don't have any word yet on casualties. I should say, in terms of these images, very sobering and concerning. For our radio listeners, if they want to see these images, of course, you can go to the GB News website or our YouTube channel, subscribe to that. Very concerning imagery. Also, imagery coming out this morning in terms of this satellite image, a satellite image that shows a huge convoy of vehicles snaking its way towards Kyiv, but making slow progress, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. They have released their latest update, their security analysis of the situation on the ground from their intelligence assets and satellite images off the scene. And although this is a huge armoured division, some 40 miles in length, it is making slow progress, and they believe that is in part due to some logistical issues along the supply lines, getting fuel to the vehicles up front, weapons, ammunition, and the fact, of course, that the Ukrainians have been launching huge retaliatory strikes on this convoy, taking out some of the vehicles as well. Now, the UK Ministry of Defence also says that the Russian military forces have increased their shelling of the outskirts of Kyiv and the city of Kharkiv, which we were talking about in terms of having come under increasing bombardment in recent days. Yesterday, we saw what the Ukrainian government says were Grad rockets going in, cluster munitions, reports of dozens of civilian deaths in that town. So really, as I say, concerning images coming out this morning, but also that intelligence assessment from the UK Ministry of Defence here in the UK, suggesting that Russia just hasn't been making the same kind of advances or the planned advances that it had wanted to make by this time in the operation, day 6 after the invasion began.
OK, Mark, thank you very much. Now, many people have been calling Putin's actions in Ukraine inhuman. And Marina Litvinenko, widow of the former Russia spy Alexander Litvinenko, who was poisoned in London in 2006 after decrying his leadership as a mafia state, says Ukrainians are showing the best example of humanity. Well, I'm pleased to say we are joined by Marina Litvinenko this morning. A very good morning to you and a very warm welcome to the programme. I suppose you, of all people, after the assassination of your husband by President Putin, knows what he's capable of.
Yes, everything what we can see now on TV, all this last news, is just absolutely devastating. It's already 6th day when it all started, and every time you're thinking, oh, it would finish today, or maybe it would be finished tomorrow, but no, we can move. And I didn't expect it. I knew who is Mr. Putin since he killed my husband, even earlier when we should get out from Russia. But I've never believed he would be able to make this a war in Europe.
And what do you make of the response from the West? Do you understand why we haven't been able to go to war with a nuclear country and have had to rely instead on heavy sanctions? And I wonder, you know, what the response of, I presume, your many contacts back in Russia has been to the West's invasion. Do they still believe what Putin is telling them?
It's a really sad story. In 2006, I would like to remind you, it was not simply my husband was killed. It was using radioactive polonium-210. And we already started to talk of act of radionuclear terrorism in center of London. But reactions? Yes, it was some reactions, but not strong reactions. And it was not West united against Putin of doing this. And after that, we received another chemical attack in London, in UK in 2018, when Skripal was poisoned. And what else? It was some kind of reaction, bigger than in 2006, but not enough. it's still be business as usual. It was so many communication between Russian and British business, just discussing we need to save this relationship because Russian ordinary people would be suffered. And what we have now in 2022, real war. And now Ukrainian ordinary people suffered because they have a bombing their houses, their cities, and they just need to escape from Ukraine to save their children.
So you think the West then should have seen this coming? We had a biographer on this morning describing him as a madman. Do you think that, you know, given everything that you've just told us, we should be alarmed by the rhetoric of the last few days, not least talking about his nuclear deterrence being put on high alert?
It should be alarmed again many years ago. In 1999, when apartment was bombing in Moscow, in another cities in Russia, when Putin became, just before Putin became president of Russia, it was a strong signal. These people, Putin and who brought him to this power, they are capable for anything. And my husband published a book together with Yuri Felshtinsky, this is another writer, about this. There's a lot of evidence. But people try to calculate, or is it true, or is it not true, what we should do. But now, sometimes it looks like it's too late. It's not just apartment bombing. It's the cities, it's whole country now in a war zone.
Marina, tell me, how is your husband viewed in Russia? You know, in the West, of course, we all see him as a victim of Putin. We talk about people like Alexei Navalny as something of a hero in the West. Is that how the Russian people see both of those men?
Sasha was a person who knew this system from inside. He was not a politician. He was not a oppositioner in a way what we now think oppositioners. He was an officer of security service, and he joined this service just after Soviet Union was collapsed. And he really believed this is new time for new country, for new Russia. But very soon he realized is not true. And it's going to be revenge from former KGB officers, from criminal people, from people who collected money illegally. And I think he was the first person who stand up in 1998 and talk about openly. But people still be in euphoria. Not only people in the West, people inside of Russia couldn't believe you can return time back. And when he was under pressure, not just himself, just he was worried about me, about our 6-year-old son, why he decided to escape. He was very much criticized of calling us a defector or betrayer of everything. But Sasha was not defector and betrayer. He tried to prevent everything of what happened now. First of all, by his life, when he was alive, and then after his death, he tried to prove what we are front of.
Mm. And I suppose so many people who have done what your husband did and spoken out against President Putin have suffered the consequences. Many people are fearful of standing up to him. We've seen his inner circle shrinking and shrinking in recent years. I wonder, are you still fearful of President Putin? Are you still fearful of speaking out against him?
I think it's only way. Every time when you try to conform a mad person or a criminal person, you do it just a worse situation because you are always doing step back and this person going to do more forward. And it's exactly for what happened inside of Russia and now in Europe, because we every time try to comfort. And these people believed they can do anything. And even more when they realize some former leaders of European country became part of business in Russia, they decide we can buy all of you because you don't care about democracy, you don't care about human rights, because you are just looking for money. And this was their understanding, this West world. And they using all propaganda machine inside of Russia to send the same message to ordinary people. Because you have some Russian people still believe this is not a military action. This is just very special actions to make a peaceful part in Ukraine. and they still believe it's not ordinary Ukrainian people dying. What was happened? And they believed all democracy is nothing, because I'm saying again, it's just all about money. If we give you more gas, more oil, more business, you would be satisfied, and you forget about your human rights and democracy. What
Powerful
happened?
words. Yeah, powerful words, Marina Litvinenko, and all the more powerful given everything that you and your husband have suffered. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
And I would like to finish this my speech with Slava Ukraini.
Thank you.
Marina Litvinenko, the widow of former Russian spy Alexander Litvinenko. He was poisoned in London 16 years ago after decrying the Putin leadership as a mafia state, something which Marina is echoing again today, and we have already heard in the programme from various defence experts as we have progressed this morning. Well, the time is coming up to 8:15, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has said that Vladimir Putin and his commanders must be held accountable for war crimes or any war crimes during the invasion that is going on. We go to Colonel Hamish de Breton Gordon. The Colonel is a former commander in NATO chemical, biological and nuclear weapons commander, and he joins us now. And I suppose, Colonel, that is where we begin. Possible concerns about chemical warfare. Do you think chemical and biological weapons will be involved sometime in what's going on here?
Well, I think they may have been already. When we talk about war crimes, we've also already seen white phosphorus being used, which is an incendiary device to set fire to towns and villages. I've seen the Russians at very close call in Syria over the last 10 years, and classic sort of scorch and burn tactics where collateral damage is absolutely no interest to them, and civilians are at the brunt of their attacks. 800,000 civilians have died in Syria in the last 8 or 9 years, and we're now beginning to see the civilian casualties from cluster munitions, which are a war crime to use them, white phosphorus burning. We've heard about thermobaric weaponry. I think they're now colloquially called vacuum bombs, these fuel-air mixtures that suck oxygen out of the air and kill anything in its radius. So I think we're already seeing that. And it's classic Russian tactics. And of course, there is the valiant defense from the Ukrainians, and they're doing a great job, and it's frustrating Putin, which is why I think he's been talking about nuclear weapons over the last few days, because things are not going to plan. One of the few great frustrations I expect for the armchair generals like myself, and being a former tank commander, seeing that 40-mile column of armoured vehicles trundling towards Kyiv. I hope we're passing that information to people on the ground, because it would, if we and the Americans are opposing this, that column would be finished. But it is very sinister that it looks like they are moving on Kyiv, and that is where we can see huge casualties. And these, and just to reiterate, the way that the Russians and the Syrians attacked cities in Syria, they use every weapon available, including chemical weapons. And these sieges can take years, and that is the worry. So I think we need to be on the absolute lookout for these irregular weapons, and we must call them out. I'm very glad that Raab has now said that war crimes are being committed, and we're noting them. But I think they've been committed from the very start of this conflict. And as we've seen, unless we're tough with Putin and stand up to him, he does whatever he likes.
Quite, Hamish, and we underestimate him, don't we, at our peril. And if he's, saying that he's putting his nuclear forces on so-called enhanced combat duty, does that not make us all start to worry here? I mean, I can't tell you the numbers of people, friends and family who've asked me the genuine question, should we be worried here, say, in London? If so, what sort of notice would we have of an intercontinental ballistic missile coming our way from Moscow and the likes?
Well, I think the first thing to say is Putin, we are reacting exactly how he wants. He wants to terrify us. He wants the British people to start questioning our involvement in Ukraine. And I would say, and of course, with my expertise in nuclear defence, I've spent a lot of time trying to reassure people. Now, all nuclear capabilities are on high alert. If our submarines, wherever they are not on high alert, we would be very surprised. So I think this is just rhetoric. It's diversionary. He's doing it to try and unsettle us. This is what the Russians do so well. And again, not wanting to harp on about Syria, but what we've seen in Syria in the last 10 years is what is now playing out in Ukraine. So we know how he's going to operate, and we need to be very aware of that. But this whole campaign of disinformation to try and get people worried is absolutely classic Russian. And we must, stand up, make sure that the population are aware. I don't think that the threat of nuclear attack on this country is any greater than it was before the Ukraine attack. But, the government and all politicians in London must be absolutely determined in their opposition to Putin to make sure that he knows that this is beyond the pale. But I'm afraid it all goes back to the Obama red line in August 2013, when we said the use of chemical weapons in Syria would be a red line and we would react. Now, we didn't. And Putin took that really as a free rein to do whatever he liked. So we're on catch up, but we must be very strong in our resolve and support our friends in Ukraine as much as we can, because this is an existential moment, on our planet. We must make sure that the Ukrainians prevail, and we must absolutely make sure that this war doesn't spread beyond Ukraine into a global event.
Colonel, we've got to leave it there. That's Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis. We appreciate that. 8:20 is the time. The latest headlines are these.
The Prime Minister says the UK will put maximum pressure on President Putin ahead of his trip to Estonia and Poland today. Boris Johnson says Vladimir Putin must fail and will feel the consequences after attacking Ukraine.
World and European football governing bodies FIFA and UEFA have suspended Russia from all their competitions. The men's national team in Russia were due to take part in this month's playoffs for a place at the World Cup. And UEFA has also ended its sponsorship deal with the Russian energy company Gazprom, which sponsors the Champions League.
The Walt Disney Company is one of several major Hollywood entertainment companies to have paused releases of its films in Russia. The group also includes Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers, whose highly anticipated The Batman was due on screens in Russia on the 3rd of March.
Social care sector could face extra pressure from the unmet need of people who avoided services such as those during the first and second wave of the pandemic. This is a report by the King's Fund. It found requests for support from older people in England went down from 1.37 million in 2019 to 1.34 million the following year. Now, the Foreign Office has advised against travelling to Russia, obviously, in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We go to Simon Calder, travel expert here, to tell us about the repercussions of that. Because, Simon, we're not just talking about going to Russia or not going to Russia. We're talking about Russian airspace, Ukraine airspace, which would impact a lot on people going where?
Well, anywhere in kind of East Asia and Australia. Indeed, I flew out last weekend to Australia, straight over the top of Russia, spent about 6 or 8 hours in Russian airspace. Coming back, the routing is now going very much over the Gulf. It takes about half an hour longer. It means that you're flying actually over northern Iraq, because it is regarded as better to be over northern Iraq than over Russia. Having said that, other airlines are still using Russian airspace. I've been tracking this morning Japan Airlines Flight 43 from Tokyo to London Heathrow. That's currently just east of Novosibirsk in Siberia. It's taking the most direct route. There is a huge cost involved to airlines if they avoid Russian airspace. It's the biggest country in the world, and it's also absolutely the shortcut between anywhere East Asia, so Tokyo, Hong Kong, even Singapore and Sydney. Russia is on the way.
And lots of change in terms of travel at the moment as well, aside from the Russian crisis. Of course, COVID situation improving. Just described that you've just, as we spoke to you this time last week or thereabouts in Sydney. What else is changing as of this week?
Well, lots is changing. Today, actually, the European Union has put out new advice to all 27 member countries saying, right, from today, we believe that we should take a much more relaxed approach. And that means if you've been jabbed, you come in without a test. If you're unvaccinated, then you're allowed in. We'll probably ask you to take a PCR test, unless you've recovered from COVID in the past 6 months, in which case you can come in anyway. Now, each EU country is sovereign and they can decide whether or not to accept those rules, and they will make their own interpretations. But Italy, absolutely critical, generally the third most popular country for British people after Spain and France. They've said, yep, OK, from today, no tests for people unless you're unvaccinated, in which case you can come in with a test. And certainly for people who haven't been jabbed, for whatever reason, life is most definitely getting easier. We saw on Friday, Iceland saying everybody can come in, no tests, no vaccination proof needed, in you come.
You make that sound so easy, but nothing's ever easy with transport. I mean, look, last week we had the British Airways outage. We had the storms, various storms that come in, chaos. I mean, that
sure. And today, anybody in London will know that there is a tube strike on. No tubes at all running. I've been running around myself, finding out what's happening, and the answer is exactly nothing. Transport for London worry of severe disruption tomorrow morning as well. And then there's another strike on Thursday. Now, trying to find some good news out of this, because there's a strike, people won't notice yet that there's a 4.8% increase in tube fares. But meanwhile, on the railways, the national railways in England and Wales, fares go up today by 3.8%, highest increase for 9 years. The government says, well, at least it's lower than the prevailing inflation rate at the moment.
Depressing.
Well, we are going to talk about that. I just also want to say, is there any lesson? We've come through a half term. Easter is the next holiday. Is there? So what I'm building up to, I mean, that was a disaster the last couple of weeks. Any light at the end of the tunnel as to travel easing?
Oh, sure. Look, the direction of travel is very much 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A lot of concern from people. Well, Isabel earlier was talking about, we're getting worried here about what Putin is saying. People who are travelling, certainly to Western Europe over Easter, it's going to be fine. But just be warned, of course, we've got our old friends Rail Engineering Works. So Stansted Airport's going to be cut off from the usual Stansted Express rail services, and there's going to be all kinds of other closures if you're travelling within the UK. Sorry to be the voice of travel doom.
You have to want to do it, really, I suppose. Thanks very much indeed, Simon. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, stay with us this morning. Coming up, what can we learn about Putin from his body language? We'll be finding out from a body language expert after this short break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We want to do something quite interesting now because we all have our opinions on Vladimir Putin. But what about body language? Well, we're going to analyse that. We're going to talk about that now. Whatever impression he likes to display, tough, strong, in control. But what other signs is he giving off? Let's find out now from body language expert Judy James, who joins us now to analyse this. Judy, we've seen big tables. We've seen him at distance from everyone. We've seen his face quite bloated these days. What are you noticing about him?
I mean, this is a man, as we all know, part of his power base depends on his ability to do a poker face. So I would describe him as a Machiavellian silverback. He has to look like the smartest leader. He has to look also like the physically strongest leader. And that means that we get a lot of masking when it comes to his body language. Not a lot has actually changed. I think that we're now shining a global light on this man and his performance. But in actual fact, it's always been thus with him. The biggest change, the biggest difference, the very striking and very curious note is his spatial behaviour that you mentioned. Why is he suddenly using these huge tables? Now, we associate space with power. And when I first saw him with Macron sitting right down the far end of the table, the suggestion was that this was part of a similar power play that he was doing. And he always does with world leaders, that he was trying to humiliate Macron to make him look smaller. But clearly we've seen it since with his own ministers, we've seen it with different world leaders. And that, I suppose, would sort of send out the question, is this a sign of paranoia? Is it some kind of health fear? Is it something about fear of being attacked, assassinated? That's something that we don't know. The clues that are coming out with his different appearances, though, will be micro gestures. You're picking up on one now. This was the point when he was talking about the nuclear deterrent. And the man always looks chilling. His eye stare looks chilling. He was leaning forward here and we had a hand clasped. And the moment for me was that moment that you've just seen there. It's a very small gesture. It's called a thumb shrug. What that signalled and what worried me most about that was it was a gesture that was saying that the things that I'm doing and the nuclear deterrent, it's not my fault. You've brought this on yourself. That to be able to do a shrug like that, and he echoed it in his eyebrow shrug as well. It was dismissive.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. We want to look at the big competitor, President Zelenskyy, in comparison to how he is projecting himself through this awfulness. So let's take a look at him and tell us what you think you notice about him.
We have two extremes here, completely contrasting. So Putin does a poker face. Zelenskyy, every emotion is reflected in his facial expression. This is a man, and he said it himself, who's made a career out of making people smile and laugh. And now we have this sadness in his eye expression. But also we're getting, as well as the sadness, we're getting a really solid look. He does a lip purse when he finishes his sentences. There was a slight ripple in his lip movement there. He is nodding as he speaks. We've got chopping gestures. So although we're seeing a lot more softer emotions than we're getting from Putin, the look of resilience is absolutely 100% from him. And again, even that mouth shrug at the end, defiance would be the message coming from him.
Judy James, thank you so much. Body language expert describing two very different looking presidents in very different circumstances. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. We'll do so with us after the break. We'll be taking a look at today's newspapers' front pages. We're joined by Robert Fox and Petri Hoskin. See you in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Breaking news coming in again. Let's go to our security editor, Mark White, the latest on the Ukrainian situation. What have you got, Mark?
This is Dmytro Kuleba, who is the foreign minister in Ukraine. He has just issued a statement to say that Russia is committing war crimes, that it has not only struck the administrative headquarters for the state of Kharkiv in the northeast of Ukraine this morning, and we were showing images earlier of that missile strike on that administrative building, but they have also attacked, according to the foreign minister, residential areas in Kharkiv for the second day running. We saw images yesterday that showed what looked like cluster munitions and missile strikes in residential areas of Kharkiv. Again, that is, according to the foreign minister, happening this morning. He's accused the Russian government of committing more war crimes out of fury and murdering more civilians, he says. And Oleg Sinubov, who is the head of Kharkiv Regional State Administration, has just echoed what the foreign minister has said. He said that residential areas in Kharkiv are coming under attack this morning from shells and missiles launched by Russian forces. But, he says, the city's defences are holding. Fierce fighting in what is Ukraine's second largest city in recent days, now coming under direct shelling and missile attacks, according to both the Ukrainian foreign minister and the head of the state administration for Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Petri Hoskin and Robert Fox here to discuss the newspapers. Robert Fox is the defence editor of the Evening Standard. So a call again against Russia for war crimes. What is the difference between a deliberate war crime and an accident? Can they claim this was an accident, or some of these blasts are accidents?
No, from what Mark has been saying, they know if they're bracketing, as they call it, with artillery fire and rocket fire, which from the imagery is what I am seeing, they know where the civilian residential areas are, and they're hitting it. They're very easy to avoid. And I think that the other thing that the administrators in Kharkiv are not saying, and they're concealing, is, of course, the Russians are desperate to take Kharkiv, and they've got to take Kharkiv with infantry. And this is where even the Brit Defence Intelligence won't tell you what the orders are to the infantry, why they're not using them. And they're not using them because we've seen on occasions when they've got out of their trucks, either you get young Ukrainian women saying, "What the hell are you doing here?" or they get shot. That's what happened with the Spetsnaz that they put into the edges of Kyiv in Ukrainian uniforms, in personnel carriers with Ukrainian blazons and flags on it. But they knew immediately what they were. Look, the other thing, very quickly to say, that nobody has mentioned, but it's now becoming conspicuous. We heard that half the Russian Air Force was in and around Ukraine 10 days ago.
So where are they?
Why haven't they been used?
Right, let me ask you something else. Why is the Ukrainian Air Force not being used? Just this whole airspace thing, what is going on here? Because we had a commander on earlier, and he said this 40-mile truck convoy, said if that had have been an engagement with the United States or the UK, that truck convoy would be wiped out.
Husbandry.
Right.
They're saving up what they've got because it's when they move. Look, Eamonn, they're still way out.
Yeah.
They're 20 miles away.
Okay.
And it's when they start going in. And as a friend of mine who came from Lviv over the weekend was saying that, you know, when you go from Lviv into Poland, you have no idea. Most of the Ukrainian roads are rubbish anyway. So they're terrible for tanks. And funny enough, what you've been saying, no criticism of GBNews, but the images is of trucks. We're not seeing many tanks or artillery.
But they still need those trucks for food, for logistics, for fuel.
The intelligence brief yesterday was, it's amazing. They've been thinking about this thing for months.
Yeah.
They're having difficulties in bringing that up.
Yeah.
And what they need, talking of the rotten roads again, is that they need bridging systems. And apparently the man with the bridge is way at the back. And how do you overtake it? It is a prime target. But I would think that the supply of effective artillery, effective shoulder-held stuff that the Brits have been providing, they want to keep it for the really big fight for Kyiv. And you watch, and I think we've done 100 hours, and this is the order from Putin. If they try to get into Kharkiv, watch out. The Ukrainians may cleverly shoot and scoot and pull out altogether.
Okay.
But at the moment, what we're saying is that they've got the initiative.
Yeah.
Right.
Petri, I want to turn our attention to what's on the front of many of the papers, of course, the children. And, you know, we're talking this morning about the breaking news, further attacks on residential areas in Kharkiv. And, of course, when pictures like this are being broadcast around the world, it increases the number of people who are trying to flee from the country.
And that's the issue, isn't it? We've seen, you know, hundreds of thousands crossing mostly into Poland, and we're told this is because they want to be close to Ukraine because they've got family in Ukraine, and also they do want to go back when this is all over. And that brings me to what Britain's doing, and the fact that, you know, we had the immigration minister, Kevin Foster, saying that they could come over and pick fruit. Look, you know, the door, like the rest of Europe, I think, to the UK, has to be open. There should be no visa
in
requirement.
fairness, they've gone further, haven't they, since that comment was made by a junior minister in the Home Office?
Yes,
and they've
I
said
agree.
100,000 can come.
But they're saying 100,000. But this is a war. We can see this. This is a proper refugee crisis. This isn't just people wanting to immigrate, to emigrate to the UK and get a job here. These are people whose home is being bombarded, and never more so than now, as we've seen with the dreadful weapons that Putin has turned his attention to using. So more and more people will need, millions of people will need a home. And I think it's a little bit embarrassing that Priti Patel is saying, well, we can't just open the floodgates because you might get some Russians coming over. Now is not the time. We'll sort all that out later. And I wonder what your viewers would think. Is there an appetite for Ukrainian refugees? And I suspect the answer is yes.
I think
this
a poll
is a
that's
war.
been done of the UK shows 70% in support of vote
in
engagement.
favour
I don't know
of
about
letting
GBNews
them
viewers
in.
or listeners specifically. Who knows? Shall we look at the negotiations as well that have been going on? Round one, pretty fruitless yesterday. And I suppose the question in all of this is, how do you give somebody like President Putin an out? He needs an out, doesn't he, to save face?
Yeah, of course he needs an out, and I likened it to anybody who's...
He's not thinking of an out. He's thinking of an in.
He's not thinking of an out. You're absolutely right. But if there is to be any sort of negotiation, he has to win something. Yeah. What that is has to be down to Ukraine. But I do want to mention Liz Truss and her ilk, who think they're talking tough, but what they're doing is goading him. It feels to me like she just wants to self-aggrandise. She wants to be the big I am because she wants to be leader of the party. Be very careful. Words matter at this stage more than ever. It matters what you say.
She's in Geneva today, of course. And Robert, on the ground, the ordinary citizens of Ukraine, petrol bombs, a big part of their defence. What do you make? This is in The Guardian, page 5.
Yes, we've had a lot of this imagery of people being taught how to make Molotov cocktails. It's relatively light and slight at this stage. But what I suspect we're looking at is this, that one of the senior military analysts in the UK, who is actually active on the job looking at the stuff, said every day that they're slipping in their timetable will add a week onto the campaign. And I don't know where we will be in 6 weeks' time, but I think we'll still be in a war. And that's when the people with the Molotov cocktails come in.
Just if we show those graphics again there, I mean, what you're looking at is, and it's been quite well studied, the weak points in the armoury of these particular vehicles.
Yes.
These are the susceptible points.
Yeah, and the kind of stuff, though, that the Brits have been providing, and I believe they're providing more, the light anti-tank weapon, shoulder-launched, fire and forget, they're particularly good against this stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to be judicious. Looking at that convoy, you've got several ex-soldiers on your staff back there, and we were looking at it. What you do, you take out the front, take out the back, and then smash them in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to be judicious. Don't think we're preaching to the unconverted, because this is what does seem really well done and underestimated. To do a Bushism and misunderestimated by the Russian command. And it seems crazy that the Ukrainians are very good at dispersing their forces. They haven't got one Ukrainian army. I was surprised that somebody said initially the people were saying, oh, it's going to be like Baghdad or the Kosovo operation. No, it's not. It's a Ukrainian operation. And the big fight hasn't been around the Donbass because the big army isn't there, funnily enough. And it's going to be elsewhere. But just to add another one, and I wanted Simon Calder to come in on this, the big unknown is Turkey.
Meaning?
Turkey, theoretically in NATO, theoretically a friend of Russia at the same time. They're providing weapons to the Ukrainians, and they can shut off the Bosphorus, so you can't get the big Russian naval ships in to support Sebastopol. I mean, there's some professors looking at maps from armchairs in Yorkshire were saying Odessa had fallen on the first day. Odessa hasn't fallen. It's a big, big board. And there's so much to play. And for Putin, whatever analogy you want to use, it's like a clock with too many moving parts. And he just simply hasn't grasped that. That's why the generals look so glum.
I just find this amazing that we're talking about this.
I know.
I mean, you know, one of the biggest military powers, if not the biggest military power on earth, and they don't seem to either have the equipment, the expertise.
Well, that's what's interesting, isn't it? The equipment is really old stuff. I mean, all this new stuff they were supposed to have built, you'd think that they'd lead with that if they had it. So, you know...
They haven't been able to produce it.
What a shocker that we might have been lied to by this. But because it does seem... And the tanks are breaking down and they're running out of fuel. And if I can, there was one story to add a little light touch to this, is that a farmer, it's called Farmageddon, the headline, which is great, a farmer's gone viral on social media after appearing to steal a 12-ton Russian tank using his tractor. So there is a video, I think you've got it. Here he is, look,
the tank's on his land and he's towing it off, is he?
He's towing it off his land. But also scrap metal has huge value in Ukraine, and that's what he said. Scrap metal is very valuable, so we're very excited.
But what you're pointing out, Petra, really is that they are running out of fuel.
They're running out of fuel.
One of the biggest oil producers in the world.
Well, they haven't.
They're running out of fuel.
They weren't planning for more than 2 or 3 days, were
As
they?
my old editor would say, some mistake, surely.
That's how the Germans lost the Battle of the Bulge.
Yep.
Wasn't it? They ran out of fuel.
Just the basics.
Yep.
Food, medicines and fuel.
OK, guys, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to talk about rail fares. Simon Calder mentioned those 10 minutes ago. A rise right across England and Wales. The average is
3.8%, which has prompted city-wide tube strikes. The fare rise will undoubtedly add hundreds of pounds to passengers' annual travel costs, also contributing to the widening, of course, of the cost of living crisis.
Well, GB News North West of England reporter Bradley Harris. He's inside one of the train stations in Manchester there to get reactions from passengers, which I'm sure, Bradley, are not going to be good.
That's right. Yeah, not very good in terms of a reaction to this story today. This is the biggest rise in rail ticket prices for passengers in England and Wales since 2013. This is not only bad timing, but a big impact for many people who rely on train travel across England and Wales, mainly because of the cost of living crisis that we're all experiencing at the moment. We know already that things like groceries, household bills are all going up. The price of petrol is now over £1.50 a litre, so an increase on rail travel will certainly be a big blow for many people who are financially being impacted post pandemic. I've actually been chatting to commuters outside Manchester Piccadilly station where I'm standing today to find out what they think about this rail fare increase and whether it's worth it. Let's hear some of their thoughts.
3.8%, it might not sound like much, but for me, as I say, I'm a student here at the University of Manchester and I commute in here 5 days a week from Doncaster. And as I say, the sort of weekly tickets are not that sustainable and they're not very flexible. So I'm getting single tickets pretty much every day or returns. So 3.8% every day will add up to a lot. For people like me who are commuting and use the trains a lot, it will add up.
No, I don't think we should be increasing our rail fares, mainly because you look at other places, even in Europe, you could probably pay £11 for the same journey and probably on a quieter train and probably on a better looking train as well.
I mean, it's not a massive increase. But again, I don't think they should be charging us any more than they already do. I don't have a rail card. I should probably get one.
I mean, you can get a train down to Euston, it takes about 2 hours. That's almost commutable now from Preston, but it's the cost of the ticket. If they want to level up, Northern England and put more jobs in Northern England and places in the Northwest, I think they should nationalise the trains and decrease the cost of the tickets.
You don't think they're affordable, the tickets?
I don't think so, no. Not when you're paying £200 odd to get down to London. You've got to go buy a cheaper option, which is not, obviously, doesn't get you there, at the right time.
For us to go out and then spend like 60-something quid just to get to a place, it's not really fair. It stops us going out. So it stops us going out if it goes.
Now, it's worth remembering that this cap on rail fares, which is rising today, is actually in line with the retail price index, which is a measure on inflation for last July, plus 1 percentage point. I've been also chatting to Campaign for Better Transport because they've done some analysis, and this is really quite shocking actually. They found that the average full-time worker commuting from Brighton to London would have to work 7 weeks to earn enough money to pay for their annual season ticket. That's now costing £5,302, up 194 quid compared to last year. So it'll be interesting as these prices now go up from today, 3.8%. It'll be interesting to see if people are changing their commute or will stop their commute altogether.
Interesting indeed. Bradley, thank you so much for that. Well, let's go with that to Southend-on-Sea. It will today become officially a city. That is, of course, in honour of the late Sir David Amess, who was an MP for the town for 24 years. There'll be a ceremony a little bit later on this morning. Prince Charles and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, will grant the city that status to the town and then visit the local area. And our reporter, Ellie Costello, is on the seafront for us this morning. So, Ellie, a historic day then.
Good morning, Isabel and Eamonn. Yes, a historic and a momentous day for Southend. A very grey day, actually, but there is certainly lots of joy in the people's faces here as their beloved town becomes a city. And they will be welcoming Prince Charles and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall. It starts a little bit later on this morning at the Civic Centre in town. And that is where Prince Charles will give the letters patent to the Mayor of Southend. And that is a document that is signed by the Queen, which officially gives Southend city status. And then there will be that first City Council meeting in that building, and then Prince Charles and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, will come down here to Southend seafront, and they're actually going to come down to this pier here. And this is what makes Southend so famous. It's the longest pleasure pier in the world. It's just over a mile long. Look how long that is. It's incredible. And if you look really closely, you can actually see it looks like bus stations or little train stations along the way. And you're completely right, because there is a train that runs along the pier, helping people get to and from the bottom of the pier. And it's always been a diesel train, but a little bit later on, Prince Charles is actually going to open a train that runs on lithium batteries. So it's going to be a green train on Southend Pier, and it is going to be named after Sir David Amess. That's a really fitting tribute to the MP who served here for over 24 years before he was so tragically killed in October of last year. Now, after they open that train, they will go to this adventure park over here. I hope you can see that. That's called Adventure Island. They will be visiting that adventure park there, and then they'll be going to the restaurant just outside, which is called Sands by the Sea. And there they're going to meet volunteers from the RNLI, from Her Majesty's Coast Guard, and also business leaders across Southend as well. So a really packed day for the royal visit here in Southend, and a really bittersweet day for people of Southend. It's very, very sad that the late Sir David Amess will not be here, but what a fitting tribute to the city, now the city that he loved so very much.
And how he would have loved to have been there today, Ellie. As you say, a bittersweet story. Thank you so much for that.
I've been there, Ellie, and I didn't know there was a mile-long pier. I've been to the football ground and been around the city centre.
Looks lovely.
Looks very lovely. What's the beach like, Ellie? How would you describe it?
The beach is actually really sandy. It's a little bit pebbly as you go down, and the water is actually really, really still today. I was a bit worried. It's meant to be raining all day. We've got it nice and dry whilst we speak to you, but we are expecting lots of crowds on the beach a little bit later on, trying to capture a glimpse of Prince Charles and his wife. So hopefully the rain doesn't put too many people off and we still get loads of people down on this lovely sandy beach.
Let's hope so. Thanks for our trip to the beach today. Appreciate that. The city of Southend. Thank you.
Stay with us on Breakfast this morning. After the break, we'll have more updates on that ongoing situation in Ukraine. We'll also be joined by the former British ambassador to the United States, Sir Christopher Mayer. See you after the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon and welcome to a new month. A chilly start out there, but plenty of sunshine as March begins. However, it is damp still in the southeast, having seen a weather front stall through the night and really slow down. And in fact, this weather front links back to a warm front, which is going to push north once again later in the day and through much of Wednesday. So make the most of the sunny start, because the sunshine isn't going to last much longer than the next 24 hours. In fact, for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, a chilly start with those blue skies. However, apart from a few showers in the far north and west of Scotland, it's a fine day in these areas. And with light winds, it's going to feel pleasant enough, 8 or 9 Celsius. In the south, though, increasingly cloudy and damp. Light outbreaks of rain mostly, but turning more persistent for parts of Cornwall later on, and not feeling so pleasant under that persistent drizzle. Now, the cloud and the rain in the south makes some progress further north this evening and overnight, reaching Northern Ireland, reaching Northern England by the early hours of Wednesday. Always the steadiest and Most persistent rain there across Wales and the southwest. Scotland, meanwhile, keeps the clear skies and the light winds, and so temperatures dipping. Another frosty start to the day on Wednesday. But the blue skies this time don't last. That is, a lot of cloud in the south pushes into central and southern Scotland by the afternoon. Increasingly damp for the central belt, for much of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland as well. Some drier interludes in the south and the east, but for most it's increasingly breezy, cloudy, and would just keep the sunshine there in the far north of Scotland. Otherwise, it is going to turn into a dull and damp day for many. Another dull and damp day to come on Thursday, and that only slowly clearing eastwards during Friday, but it will clear in time for the weekend with more sunshine to come then.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A government building is hit by a missile strike in the city of Kharkiv in Ukraine.
A very good morning to you. The time is just 1 minute after 9 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 1st of March. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Satellite images show a 40-mile-long tank convoy heading towards the Ukrainian capital Kyiv on the 6th day of Russia's invasion.
Boris Johnson has said the UK will continue to bring maximum pressure to bear on Russia. The Prime Minister landed in the Polish capital, Warsaw, this morning. And if you want to take part in anything we are discussing about, email us GBViews@GBnews, or you can tweet, and the Twitter handle is
@GBnews.
Right. Let's go over now to Mark White, our security editor, on the very latest from Ukraine. Mark, tell us all.
Well, it was just a couple of hours ago that we broke the news that Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, had come under a missile attack. It was the administrative building and the headquarters of the state government there, where a missile was seen on CCTV. This has been put out, the footage by the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, showing that missile slamming into this building and a huge explosion of fireball. Other images which have just been released, and I'll describe this for our radio listeners, showing the aftermath. This is Freedom Square in central Kharkiv, just outside the administrative headquarters. And then there's other images that show the inside of that administrative headquarters building, and they show the absolute destruction. It's an image that looks out at the rubble in Freedom Square, and the camera comes back round to show just a scene of utter devastation inside. Now, we do not know at this stage if anyone was inside that building, if anyone was injured. Hopefully, given the fact that Kharkiv has been under severe attack in recent days, they'll have been in air raid shelters. But the foreign minister from Ukraine has described this as a war crime. Not just this, but the shelling of residential areas in Kharkiv. This has been confirmed by the head of the state administration in Kharkiv, who says that not just his administrative headquarters, but residential areas in this large city of more than 1.5 million people have been shelled. These residential areas coming under attack, apparently from Russian shelling, for the second day running. And already just yesterday, there were reports of dozens of fatalities in this residential area. And the destruction from these missiles and the shelling is obvious for all to see with the images that are coming out. I should say, for those listening on GB News Radio, they can go to our website, they can subscribe to the YouTube channel and see what are clearly very disturbing images coming out of the second largest city in Ukraine today.
President Zelenskyy obviously been speaking, and he's had some special thanks to give out. Tell us more.
Yeah, he's sent his thanks towards the royal family, in particular the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, because of course they have been tweeting their support in recent days for Ukraine. He says, Elena, his wife, and I are grateful to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge that at this crucial time, when Ukraine is courageously opposing Russia's invasion, they stand by our country and support our brave citizens. Good will triumph, he finishes his tweet. So directly thanking the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge there for their support. Clearly, this is a man who is now, his name is known all around the world for what is obviously a courageous stance that he's taken, continuing to lead, it seems, his nation from the front, appearing regularly and trying to cajole and encourage his people to continue to fight and resist the Russian invasion.
OK, Mark White, thank you very much. Well, let's bring in now the former British ambassador to the US, Sir Christopher Mayer, who joins us down the line. Very good morning to you. Look, I want to ask you. Good morning. I want to ask you first and foremost, there's been lots of praise for the way the West has responded to this. Very much Putin's achieved the sort of unity that Europe hasn't had for decades now. But a very simple question really is why, here in the UK, we haven't yet thrown out the Russian ambassador and his attachés and his many staff?
Well, as far as I know, no Russian ambassador has been thrown out by anybody. I personally am in favour of it. I know what the argument is. It is that we need to keep lines of communication open. And if we chuck out the Russian ambassador in London, they will chuck out our ambassador in Moscow. And that'll make it more difficult for us to understand what is going on in Moscow. But I have to say, it is perfectly possible to decapitate an embassy by getting rid of the ambassador. But you keep the rest of the staff there, and they do the job of day-to-day reporting of what is going on. So personally, if I was the Foreign Secretary, I would chuck out the Russian ambassador.
In the absence of that, what about a diplomatic solution to all of this, Christopher? Do you think Putin is serious on finding that solution diplomatically?
Well, he will want a diplomatic solution when he has finished doing what he intends to do militarily. The time for the diplomats to come back into the room is when the generals walk out, if you see what I mean. And as far as I can see, the generals are not walking out in Ukraine. And indeed, the military column, according to many reports, is heading towards Kyiv. is larger and longer than it has been since the invasion started. So this set of talks, which is going on directly between Ukraine and Russia on the border with Belarus, I can't see that reaching any kind of useful, successful outcome anytime soon. But neither Moscow nor Kyiv want to be accused of not trying to find a diplomatic solution, so they will continue these talks until one or the other decides that they're useless. The moment will come for diplomacy, but I fear that the whole situation is going to get worse before it gets better. Or let me make it a bit more precise than that. It's going to get much more dangerous before it gets better.
There may not be a diplomatic solution immediately, obviously, but diplomacy is still important, isn't it, in the actions of the Foreign Secretary? And I wonder what you view, what your view is of the way the Kremlin blamed our Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, yesterday for the escalation in the nuclear rhetoric.
Well, it was an absurd dishonesty by Putin to say that. In fact, if it weren't so serious, it would be laughable. It would be a joke. What Liz Truss said, which allegedly spurred the Kremlin to make this threat, for Putin to make this threat, there was no justification whatsoever for Putin raising the level of nuclear preparation, nuclear weapons preparation above the basic. I personally thought that what Liz Truss said was perfectly acceptable, quite normal, and what the heck did the Russians expect, given that it was they who were invading Ukraine and not us, if you see what I mean.
So, Christopher, have you ever met Vladimir Putin?
No, I spent many years in the British Embassy in Moscow and spent a lot of time going around the old Soviet Union and Russia, but Putin was an unknown factor. In fact, when I left Moscow, I think he was only just leaving Dresden as a KGB officer at the end of his posting there when German unification took place.
He's a fascinating, if not terrifying, character, and I just wonder what your assessment is of where this could all end for him. Lots of people describing this as the end for the Putin regime. And do you think it needs to be, you know, somebody from an inside job, as it were? It's not going to be the West, but perhaps there could be a palace coup, or one of his team deciding he's frankly too dangerous, or as one biographer told us this morning, he's a madman.
Well, there are plenty of people who think he's become deranged, unhinged by present events. I have to say that if you judge, for years we've said, oh, this is an ice-cold character, this is somebody who does diplomacy and politics like a game of chess. But what we have seen over the recent weeks and months is a man who seems to be very emotional and who has started an invasion which has produced politically and internationally precisely the opposite effect to that which he wanted. He doesn't want a stronger NATO on his western frontier. He doesn't want a more unified Europe. And I would suggest to you that he calculated that the West would be so disunited, there would be such difficulties between the United States on the one hand, Europe on the other, between the UK and the European Union, that this would be a cake ride to go into Ukraine and put in a puppet government there. I think he has been shocked by the reaction, which is, as I say, and I repeat, the exact opposite to that which he wanted and which he set out in a number of speeches and in draft treaties which he sent to Washington and NATO Brussels at the beginning of the year. So I think if you are looking to see whether someone is going to move to remove Putin, it would have to be from inside Russia itself, either from inside the Securocrat ex-KGB military elite. I have no idea whether this is happening or not, but it could be. And the other thing that could happen is a growing groundswell of popular dissatisfaction with the regime. And that we may be starting to see that in the demonstrations in a number of Russian cities. And we may be starting to see that now in the run on the ruble and people getting really worried about their savings and whether they can have access to them and what the heck do they do if the banks freeze up and stop putting cash into the cash dispensers. I think it's a very dangerous moment for Putin. And because I think he is quite irrational at the moment, and a rational man under pressure with nuclear weapons is not a happy sight to see.
Sir Christopher, really appreciate your take on things. Thanks for your time this morning, Sir Christopher Mayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, joins us now in the studio. The diplomacy goes on. The Prime Minister's on his travels to Eastern Europe today, the Foreign Secretary to Geneva.
Absolutely. The Prime Minister in the last half an hour has landed in Warsaw for the first leg of his two-leg visit to that region of Europe today. Firstly, he's in Poland. He'll be meeting the Polish leadership, the Polish government, but also he'll be delivering a speech about the unity of the West. And I think this has been one of the successes of the West over the last, really just the last week or so, that far more than perhaps Russia had anticipated, far more than many people watching even in this part of the world had anticipated, that the West has decided to move in lockstep. And although that may mean that the UK might not have gone as far as we want to on things like SWIFT, where the UK is pushing still for all Russian financial institutions to be excluded, not just the bulk of them, as has happened, it does mean that countries like Germany have gone much further than people were expecting them to. So moving as one has presented this united front, and that certainly, in terms of the battlefield in Ukraine, provides a moral core, provides a morale core as well to those Ukrainian fighters and those Ukrainian citizens. Potentially, that solidarity that we're seeing right across the Western world, the free world, the developed world, and the democratic world, potentially that is slowing the Russian advance because, of course, it's been almost a week since Russia started their full-scale invasion, and they're still not yet in Kyiv, but it does look pretty testy.
And I think given that a week later that threat, as we've seen the satellite images, a sort of column of Russian vehicles 40 miles long heading towards the capital, incredibly sinister scenes. People were initially told to stay in the capital, but we're expecting the numbers of refugees to increase. We've already seen 500,000. You were tweeting yesterday saying that really we've led the way when it's come to sanctions and our reaction, our rhetoric, our response to Putin, but we've perhaps not been as strong as we could have been in reply in terms of refugees and visas. Are we doing enough yet?
Well, I spoke to one government minister yesterday who told me he believed that potentially the refugee response from this country could be our Achilles heel in the entire approach. This government has been seen the world over to be doing quite a lot. I mean, the shipments of munitions started in early January to Ukraine at a time when not many other countries were doing the same. Really, when it comes to military measures, when it comes to economic measures, the UK has been on the front foot and is pushing for more, potentially doing the most of any G7 country to try and push for that Western unity. However, when it comes to refugees, the government does seem to have been on the back foot, following public pressure rather than leading it. And I've spoken to a number of particularly Conservative MPs who are worried that the government will be seen to be reacting in this space rather than leading in this space, particularly as we see on the front pages of newspapers at the moment, that young 8-year-old girl, Polina, on the front page of The Sun. When people see images like that, and the images of trains where men are staying behind in Poland, waving off their wives and their daughters and their children, public pressure on this issue will become very strong. We already saw yesterday YouGov has a poll out, 77% of Brits, majorities of voters of all parties, wanting the United Kingdom to do more on refugees. And the UK government saying that yesterday's announcement from Priti Patel about the possible 100,000 refugees was just a first step. What more may we be hearing throughout the week? Potentially some significant moves.
Okay. Tom, have a good show at 9:30. Appreciate you coming in to talk to us beforehand. Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. Thank you very much. On this Tuesday, the 1st of March, St David's Day, actually. Here's your headlines.
The Prime Minister says the UK will put maximum pressure on President Putin ahead of that trip that Tom was just talking about to Estonia and Poland today. Boris Johnson says Vladimir Putin must fail and will feel the consequences after attacking Ukraine.
World and European football governing bodies FIFA and UEFA have suspended Russia from all their competitions. The Russian men's national team was due to take part in this month's playoffs for a place at the World Cup finals. UEFA has also ended its sponsorship deal with the Russian energy company Gazprom, which sponsors the Champions League.
Walt Disney is one of several major Hollywood entertainment companies to have paused releases of its films in Russia. The group also includes Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers, whose highly anticipated The Batman was due on screens in Russia on the 3rd of March.
Travel chaos in London. All underground lines are suspended. It says thousands of tube workers go on strike in a dispute over jobs, pensions and conditions.
Now, after the break, we'll be asking, how do you talk to your children about the war? It's been something that everybody's been talking about now for over a week. Lots of people are very worried about what's happening in Ukraine. Of course, children hear a lot of that. How do you address it? How do you reassure them? We'll be speaking to an expert after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So everywhere you look on the news, front pages of the newspapers, sadly, it is all about war.
Yeah, pictures and footage of explosions, gunfire, bombs, and to be honest, today, tragically, children on the face of the papers. So how do we talk about this really difficult subject with our children? Many have struggled to explain what is going on. Well, thankfully, psychotherapist Lucy Beresford is here, armed with lots of tips for us, because it's a fact I've got small primary school-aged children. Children are worried about what's happening.
They're worried. They'll be talking about it in the playground because they'll be overhearing all the grown-ups talking about it. And if you've got the radio on when you drive them to school, they'll also be picking up these messages. They're like sponges. They just absorb all this information, but they have no context. They can't really understand what they're hearing. So it's up to the grown-ups to really help them process that information. Now, the fear comes when we feel so out of control. And if grown-ups are feeling afraid, children will also pick that up. So there are two things really first to do. The first is to really pay attention to your own emotional repertoire and how you are around your children. If you're worried, try to make sure that you're not worried in front of them. Also minimise the amount of news that there is on in your house. If the TV is off and on, if the radio is off and on, kind of allow those moments where there is less news being consumed, either being sitting in front of the TV or just hearing it, similarly in the car. And also maybe talk to them about how this is happening a very long way away. If you've got a globe in your house or a picture of a map, you could show them that it's actually a very long way away. Maybe say to them, you know how long it took us to drive to Granny's house, and that's just in this part of the country. Well, this is a very long way away. So children start to develop a context for the information that they are going to be picking up.
I'm just adding to what you say, because sometimes I think we underestimate children's power of reasoning. When I was 8, 9, 10, 11, all of this was going on around me in Belfast, and we saw bombs and bullets and fires and riots, and all the news was happening. It was there on the radio. There was no television. There was no escape from it. But I found what I tended to do as a child, and I think I'd include my brothers in this, you reasoned it yourself. It actually led to me wanting to be a journalist and explaining to the rest of the world what was going on. Yeah. But sometimes I think kids can comprehend and help with what you've said there in conjunction with what you said. But different children have different personalities, don't they?
Well, no, but I think that's a really good point. And I am always a little bit afraid to sugarcoat everything. You know, I don't want to lie to them. You know, everything's fine, and just say, don't worry, we're not, it's a long way away. It's a very fine balance between reassuring
and educating.
And also using that age-appropriate language, because if you've got very young children, then you might have to start talking about, well, very far away there's a man, and he's a bit of a bully, and he's trying to do some difficult things. Whereas if you've got older children, or you might have teenagers, they would really relish getting into the nitty-gritty of the politics and being treated as a sort of semi-adult, so that they can talk about it.
Beyond all of this, from semi-adults to adults, there's a lot of anxiety. This happened during the pandemic as well, that people tuned into the news and they just listened to this. And there'd be people watching our programme, they're watching different programmes throughout the day, to be informed, to be educated about what goes on. But they're anxious, and we're talking grown adults.
Anxious and in fact really quite overwhelmed, because we have already had 2 years of fear, certainly that first year. So we've got another anxiety of feeling out of control, feeling that we can't really do anything. So I think it's about recognising how much news you're consuming, focusing on protecting yourself, getting sleep, nutrition, but also what could you do? So, for example, today, 1st of March, people are talking about Blue Yellow Tuesday, where people feel they want to just show that they're supporting Ukraine, or maybe contributing to some charities. There's DuPaul, which is doing a lot of work for refugees. There is Kyiv Independent, which is a newspaper on the ground that's trying to counter fake news. If you do that from this country, you might feel that you're doing something a little bit, and that can take some of the anxiety away, to feel that you're in control of something when the rest of your life or the world experiences feels out of your control.
And I suppose the other thing to do is to appreciate, you know, our security, our freedom. I was tucking my kids into bed last night thinking what a privilege. Sometimes it feels a chore to be doing some of these mundane things, but actually what a privilege to be able to do that, and making sure we're really mindful.
Yes, people scoff at the idea of gratitude lists, but at the end of every day, if you lie in your bed and think of 3 things that you're really grateful for, currently that could be, I have a roof over my head, I had a supper tonight, or my children are safe. Something like that can actually really shift your mindset, as opposed to thinking about the day-to-day worries. And listen, there are a lot of really stressful things happening in this country as well, cost of living crisis, people are nervous, but actually focus on the good things.
Well, you've been one of the good things today, Lucy Beresford, psychotherapist. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much. Well, that's it from us for today. We'll be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Up next, Tom Harwood has the briefing for you. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Eamonn McGivern, and welcome to a new month. A chilly start out there, but plenty of sunshine as March begins. However, it is damp still in the southeast, having seen a weather front stall through the night and really slow down. And in fact, this weather front links back to a warm front, which is going to push north once again later in the day and through much of Wednesday. So make the most of the sunny start, because the sunshine isn't going to last much longer than the next 24 hours. In fact, for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, a chilly start with those blue skies. However, apart from a few showers in the far north and west of Scotland, it's a fine day in these areas. And with light winds, it's going to feel pleasant enough, 8 or 9 Celsius. In the south, though, increasingly cloudy and damp. Light outbreaks of rain mostly, but turning more persistent for parts of Cornwall later on, and not feeling so pleasant under that persistent drizzle. Now, the cloud and the rain in the south makes some progress further north this evening and overnight, reaching Northern Ireland, reaching Northern England by the early hours of Wednesday. Always the steadiest and most persistent rain there across Wales and the southwest. Scotland, meanwhile, keeps the clear skies and the light winds, and so temperatures dipping. Another frosty start to the day on Wednesday. but the blue skies this time don't last. That is, a lot of cloud in the south pushes into central and southern Scotland by the afternoon. Increasingly damp for the central belt, for much of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland as well. Some drier interludes in the south and the east, but for most it's increasingly breezy, cloudy. We'd just keep the sunshine there in the far north of Scotland. Otherwise, it is going to turn into a dull and damp day for many. Another dull and damp day to come on Thursday, and that only slowly clearing eastwards during Friday. But it will clear in time for the weekend, with more sunshine to come then.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 9:30 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Now today, Ukraine continues to dominate our politics. The Foreign Secretary is in Geneva while the Prime Minister is in Poland and Estonia. This as the International Criminal Court opens an investigation into alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Today we assess the military situation and our political response. We look at the chance of change in Russia and the emerging refugee crisis. All that on The Briefing after your morning headlines.